It's midnight again. The streets outside have gone quiet, and the world, for a few hours, feels hollow. Somewhere out there, a car hums along an empty highway. A phone rings when it shouldn't. A clock ticks past the hour that shouldn't exist. And someone, maybe you, whispers something they can't take back. Tonight, we open the radio waves to 5 stories, 5 strange echoes of the human heart. They're not just stories. They're reflections, flickers of something that might have already happened, or is about to. So, turn off the lights. Leave the window open just a little. Story 1. The Echoing Curse. There's a cafe on the corner of Alder Street. One of those places that smells of roasted beans, rain-soaked coats, and old apologies. They say every morning starts the same there, except for the day someone cursed another without meaning to. And that's the strange thing about words. Sometimes they remember the way home, even when you don't. Rain had been falling since dawn, soft and persistent, turning the streets of Hollow's End into a dull mirror of headlights and puddles. Inside Sarah's place, the clinking of cups, the hiss of the espresso machine, and the low hum of a jazz radio filled the air. Sarah moved behind the counter with the calm precision of habit. She'd run this cafe for 7 years, long enough to recognize her regulars by the way they held their cups. There was Mrs. Claymore, who always stirred her tea counterclockwise 3 times. The Miller twins, sharing a muffin like they always did, as if afraid to grow apart. And then there was Mr. Finch. He wasn't exactly a regular, just one of those customers who believed the world owed him more room than it actually had. That morning, he slammed the door open with the sound of wet frustration. "Someone took my parking spot again," he barked, shaking the rain off his coat. "3rd time this week." Sarah glanced out the window. "There are plenty of spots down the street." "It's not the same," he snapped, dropping his keys on the counter. "I like parking out front. It's closer, and maybe next time, come earlier," Sarah said before she could stop herself. There was a silence, thin, sharp. Behind them, a spoon clinked against porcelain. Old Frank, the man who'd been sitting by the window for as long as Sarah could remember, looked up from his cup. His eyes were pale, almost washed out by time. Mr. Finch leaned closer. "You should be more polite to customers, miss." Sarah felt the heat rise in her chest. Something about his tone, the entitlement, the smallness of his complaint snapped whatever patience she'd held together that morning. "Then maybe," she hissed, "you should walk home instead of taking up everyone else's space. I hope you walk so far you can't find your way back." The cafe went Kia. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, as if the sky had taken a breath. Frank's voice broke the silence, a dry whisper that carried more weight than the storm itself. "Careful, child," he murmured, stirring his coffee without looking up. "Words have long shadows. Sometimes they don't fall on the person you throw them at." "Eh." Sarah forced a nervous laugh, but no one joined her. Even the radio seemed to fade for a moment, its static turning hollow. That night, when Sarah closed the cafe, the air outside felt heavier. The rain had stopped, but the world still dripped, slow and uncertain. She walked to her car, the streetlights flickering above her, and for the first time in years, she took a wrong turn leaving the parking lot. It wasn't much, just a side street she didn't remember, looping behind a row of old shops. But when she tried to circle back to Alder Street, it wasn't there. The cafe sign was gone. The smell of coffee and rain gone. Just the hum of her car engine, echoing down an empty lane that shouldn't exist. She tried to laugh it off, to blame the rain, the dim lights. But something about the air, the way sound seemed to fold in on itself, made her uneasy. When she finally found her way home, hours later, her reflection in the hallway mirror looked distant, like someone still trying to find the way back. And outside, far down the street, a single horn honked once, twice, then fell silent. Morning arrived gray and soft, with that colorless kind of light that makes the world look half-finished. The rain had dried, but the air still smelled of iron and pavement. Sarah unlocked the cafe at 7:03, the same way she always did. She swept, she wiped the counter, she ground the first batch of beans. Everything was exactly as it should be, except it wasn't. The street outside looked unfamiliar. Not wrong, not different, just off. like someone had redrawn the lines of the buildings ever so slightly while she slept. The corner lamppost seemed taller. The florist across the street had its sign crooked the other way. Even the sound of morning traffic came from a different direction. She shook it off. It's the rain, she told herself. It always messes with perspective. By 8, the cafe had its first few customers. The usual clinking of cups returned, the low chatter, the creak of the old ceiling fan that sounded like it sighed each time it turned. That's when the door opened, and Mr. Finch stepped in. Sarah froze mid-pour. He looked exactly as he had yesterday. Same coat, same umbrella tucked under his arm, same irritated frown, but there was something different about his eyes. He walked up to the counter. Polite this time, almost too polite. "Good morning," he said, as if meeting her for the first time. Sarah's lips parted. "Mr. Finch," he blinked. "Do I know you?" Her hands tightened around the coffee pot. "You were here yesterday. You were upset about your car, remember?" He frowned. "I don't drive. Haven't for years. Bad knee." He chuckled, tapping his leg with his cane. "You must be thinking of someone else." Sarah looked past him through the rain-speckled window. There, in the same spot as always, sat an old blue sedan, the one he'd claimed yesterday. The license plate was the same, too. Her heart gave a small, confused thump. She stopped. "What can I get you?" "The usual," he said. "Black. 2 sugars." She made it in silence. When she handed him the cup, their fingers brushed. His skin was cold, not from the weather, but something deeper. Something that didn't belong to this morning. "Everything all right, dear?" The voice came from the corner. Old Frank sat in his usual seat by the window, hands wrapped around his mug like he was holding something fragile and invisible. Sarah nodded slowly. "Just tired." Frank's eyes didn't leave her face. "Don't say things you don't mean, Sarah. The air remembers more than you think." Her stomach twisted. "You mean yesterday?" Frank tilted his head. "Yesterday's already forgotten. It's today that's learning from it." That afternoon, the cafe grew busier. The regular rhythm returned. Coffee poured. Coins clinked. Laughter rose and fell, but the world outside still looked slightly rearranged. Every time Sarah glanced out the window, the angle of the light seemed to shift, even though the clock insisted it was barely noon. At one point, a man with a delivery box came in and handed her an envelope. "For you," he said. "No sender." Inside was a single slip of paper. It read, in neat black type, "When you curse someone, make sure you can still find your way back." No name, no logo, nothing. She glanced up to ask the man where it came from, but he was already gone. No bell had rung at the door. The paper trembled slightly in her hand. She folded it and slipped it into her apron pocket, telling herself she'd throw it away later. But she didn't. That night, Sarah closed up late. The rain had started again, but it was lighter this time. A whisper of drizzle that coated the glass in fine mist. She locked the door, turned off the lights, and stepped outside. The street was empty. The only sound was the hum of a street lamp flickering overhead. She walked toward her car, and for a second, she thought she saw someone sitting inside it. A shape in the driver's seat still, patient, watching. She blinked, and it was gone. Her hand hesitated on the door handle. "Get it together," she whispered. "It's just the reflection." She got in and started the engine. The radio came on by itself, though she hadn't touched it. Static. Then a voice, faint and distant. Words have long shadows. Her blood turned cold. She switched it off and drove away, trying to keep her breathing steady. The roads were slick, lined with empty shops and pools of orange light. At the next turn, she should have seen the main road, Alder Street, leading straight home. But instead, she saw a narrow lane that seemed to stretch forever, framed by identical houses that she didn't recognize. She slowed down. "Did they build a new block?" she murmured. But no, these houses looked old, older than the cafe, older than the town itself. Their windows glowed faintly from within, though she could see no figures inside. She turned around. The sign for Alder Street Cafe should have been visible from here. It wasn't. The car engine stuttered, then stopped. Silence swallowed the world. Sarah tried the ignition. Nothing. Not even a click. She reached for her phone and had no signal. The streetlights began to dim, one by one, receding down the lane like retreating stars. Her breath quickened. The world outside her windshield was melting into shadow. Then footsteps. Not hers. Not near the car. They came from somewhere, just beyond the glass, measured, slow, echoing against the wet asphalt. Sarah pressed her back against the seat. Hello? The footsteps stopped. For a heartbeat, there was only rain and her own pulse. Then a faint tapping, 3 knocks against her passenger window. She turned her head slowly. There was no one there, only her reflection, pale, frightened, staring back. And yet, she could swear she heard breathing just beyond the glass. She started the car again, whispering a prayer she didn't remember learning. The engine coughed, then roared to life. She hit the gas. The tires splashing through the puddles, the road stretching out into blackness. No matter which turn she took, every corner looked the same. Same row of houses, same dim lights, same feeling that something was following just out of sight. By the time she finally saw the cafe again, dawn was already thinning the clouds. The front lights were still on, though she knew she'd turned them off. Inside, a single figure sat at the counter, Mr. Finch, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. She pushed open the door, trembling. Mr. Finch, what are you doing here? It's what time is it? He looked up, eyes calm, almost tender. Just stopped by for a nightcap, he said. You know, I couldn't find my way home. Every street looked the same. Her throat went dry. He smiled faintly. Strange, isn't it? I thought I lived 2 blocks away, but every road kept bringing me back here. Sarah glanced at the clock. It was stuck at midnight. Behind the counter, the radio hissed to life again. A faint voice emerged through the static, familiar, weathered. The curse doesn't choose who it touches. It finds the one who believes they're safe. It was Frank's voice. Sarah turned toward the corner, where he always, Saturday, but the seat was empty. Only his cup remained still warm, steam curling in the air, and on the napkin beneath it, written in a trembling hand, you said the words, child. Now find your way back. Outside, the dawn broke pale and uncertain. The street looked normal again, almost comforting. But as Sarah stepped out, she noticed something strange. Every sound, her footsteps, the rustle of her coat, the hum of the street lamp echoed back at her a fraction too late, as if the world was repeating her, as if the echo wasn't hers anymore. She turned, heart pounding, but there was no one behind her, only the faint reflection in the cafe window, a reflection that didn't move when she did. The next morning, Sarah didn't wake to her alarm. She woke to knocking. 3 slow, hollow taps, like someone gently reminding her the world was still outside, except the sound wasn't coming from the door. It came from the mirror. Her apartment was small, cluttered with the kind of comfort that doesn't quite hide loneliness. Books piled by the couch, cold mugs on the counter, a single jacket hung near the door. The mirror stood in the hallway, a tall, thin thing framed in old oak. She stared at it. The knocking stopped. Her reflection stared back, bleary-eyed, pale. But as she leaned closer, she thought she saw something just for a heartbeat behind her own image. A streetlight flickering, rain on asphalt, the glow of the cafe sign, and then it was gone. She turned away, rubbing her temples. I need sleep, she whispered. That's all. At the cafe, things were normal. Normal. Customers came in, spoke, laughed, paid, left like clockwork. But when Sarah looked down at the register at noon, it was exactly the same total as yesterday. To the cent. Every receipt number was identical. Every order in the same order. At one point, a man came in, a stranger. He smiled, polite, and ordered a cappuccino. But Sarah could have sworn he'd been here before. The same words. The same awkward laugh. When he left, the bell above the door made no sound. Frank was in his usual spot, Or maybe it never left. "Morning, Sarah," he said, his voice like paper sliding across stone. She hesitated. "You weren't here when I opened." He smiled faintly. "Wasn't I?" His cup was already half empty. She sat across from him, ignoring the murmur of customers who didn't seem to notice the tension. "Frank, what's happening to me? You remember what you said, don't you?" Her throat tightened. "I didn't mean it." He stirred his coffee. "Intent doesn't matter. The curse feeds on belief, not guilt. You believed your words for 1 second, and the world heard you." "The world?" He looked up, eyes soft and sad. The part of it that listens when no one else does. A low hum filled the cafe, the kind of hum you hear when a refrigerator or a neon sign flickers. Deep and alive. The walls seemed to breathe. Sarah stood, shaken. "I'm going to take a walk. Be careful," Frank said. "If the streets change, don't follow them too far." She almost laughed. "The streets don't change, Frank." He didn't answer. Outside, the sky was a dull gray sheet. The air smelled of wet pavement again, just like yesterday, only yesterday never really ended. She turned left out of habit, heading toward the post office. The same baker waved from his shop window. The same woman walked her dog, its leash trailing. But when Sarah blinked, the baker wasn't waving anymore. He was frozen mid-motion, hand still raised, eyes empty. The dog barked without moving its mouth. Sarah stumbled back. Then everything snapped back to motion, like nothing had happened. She walked faster. At the post office corner, she expected to see the roundabout. Instead, the street stretched farther than it ever had before. Rows of houses she'd never noticed, each identical, each with curtains drawn. Her footsteps echoed too loud, bouncing back in perfect rhythm. After the third block, she realized the echoes weren't matching her steps anymore. They were a half second late, then a full second. By the fifth block, she could still hear herself walking. Even when she stood perfectly still, a whisper brushed her ear. "You said you hoped he'd never find his way back." She spun around. No one. The air shimmered faintly, as if heat were rising from invisible asphalt. In the distance, a taxi sat idling, headlights off. Inside, someone sat motionless in the driver's seat. Sarah hesitated, then approached. The window rolled down halfway before she even touched it. Frank was sitting inside. "Get in," he said quietly. She obeyed. The taxi smelled like damp leather and old rain. The city outside the window looked wrong, blurred, as if seen through water. Frank didn't look at her as he spoke. "The loop's begun." "What loop?" "The curse doesn't punish. It replays. Every word, every moment, until the speaker understands what they've done." Her pulse raced. "What do you mean?" Frank finally turned his head. "You wished for someone to lose their way. So now, the world will lose itself around you. Roads will fold. Faces will repeat. Time will forget how to move forward." No, I didn't mean it," he sighed. "Meaning isn't the same as undoing." The taxi stopped. Outside, the street looked like Alder again, the cafe across the road, its lights on, the same customers inside. "Go ahead," Frank said. Sarah opened the door. The air hit her like deja vu. She stepped out, and as she turned toward the cafe window, she saw herself standing behind the counter, pouring coffee, smiling at Mr. Finch. The other Sarah looked peaceful, unaware. Sarah backed away, trembling. No, this isn't real." Frank's voice came faintly from the car. "Every curse is real to the one who speaks it." The door slammed shut, and when she turned again, the taxi was gone. The next day, if it was the next day, she opened the cafe. Same hour, same faces. Even the jazz station played the same song. She dropped a cup. It shattered. When she turned to grab a broom, the cup was whole again. Her breath hitched. This isn't happening. But the world didn't argue. She ran outside. The street turned once, twice, 3 times, and every turn led back to the cafe. At the 4th, the sky dimmed violet. At the 5th, The sound of her own footsteps multiplied. Then she heard them. Dozens of overlapping footsteps, all moving a half beat behind hers. She froze, and from somewhere close, too close, she heard her own voice whisper, perfectly matching her tone, "I hope you walk so far you can't find your way back." Her chest tightened. "Stop it." The echoes didn't stop. They laughed. Back inside, the cafe lights flickered. The air smelled of burnt coffee. Mr. Finch was gone. The customers were gone. Only one cup sat on the counter half empty, still steaming. She recognized the handwriting on the receipt beneath it. Her own. The note read, "If you can't find the way back, maybe you never left." She backed away until her shoulder hit the mirror near the door. In the reflection, the cafe behind her looked different. The walls darker, the windows fogged, and behind the counter, Frank sat where she should have been. He looked older, his eyes hollow. "Frank?" she whispered. He met her gaze through the glass. "You can't curse someone without knowing the path you're walking, Sarah." Then his reflection reached out from inside the mirror. Her breath caught as fingers of smoke pressed against the other side of the glass. She stumbled back, knocking over chairs, the radio screeching static. When she turned again, the mirror was only a wall. No reflection, no Frank, just the faint sound of a car horn outside. 3 times. Slow, familiar. She stepped out onto the street. The sky was colorless again, heavy and still. A taxi idled at the curb. Through the fog glass, she could see Frank in the back seat, motionless, eyes closed like a man resting after a long drive. She walked closer, heart pounding. The door opened by itself. On the seat beside him lay a folded napkin stained with coffee. She picked it up, in the same trembling script. The curses found the one who spoke it. When she looked up again, the taxi was empty. The world began to hum. Buildings blurred. Rain reversed up into the clouds. The road bent in ways roads shouldn't. Sarah clutched her head, trying to remember which way home was, but every street she pictured twisted into another. Every corner led back to Sarah's place. Through the glass door, she saw herself again serving coffee to Mr. Finch, smiling, laughing, alive. And for a moment, she envied that version of her. That girl who didn't know what her words had done. She pressed her hand against the glass, whispering, "Please, just let me back in." Inside, her reflection looked up, smiled, and turned off the lights. The headlights carved 2 pale tunnels through the mist, twin ribbons of light swallowed by darkness just a few feet ahead. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tighter. Her knuckles looked white, ghostly against the black leather. The radio was off, had been for a long time now, but something in the car still hummed. It wasn't the engine. It wasn't the air conditioner. It was something lower, like a vibration under the skin of the night. She'd left the cafe an hour ago. She should have been home by now. But the roads kept folding in on themselves, like a map misprinted, and endlessly repeating. Every signpost she passed was the same. Hollow Ridge Road. Always the same tilt to the right. The same bullet hole through the letter O. The same yellowing sticker at the bottom. Coffee & Co. Open late. Her cafe logo. Sarah slowed the car, heart hammering. She hadn't noticed that before. The logo wasn't even in use anymore. She'd redesigned it months ago. The sticker should have been gone. The road stretched on, smooth and black. The mist clung to the ground like spilled milk. For a moment she thought she saw footprints ahead, wet ones, glimmering in her headlights, but when she blinked, they were gone. She rolled the window down, hoping for air, but the fog crept in like a living thing. It smelled faintly of roasted coffee beans and something metallic, like the scent of coins rubbed together. She whispered to herself, "Just get home. Just keep driving." Her voice was small, like it didn't belong to her anymore. And then she saw it again, the same coffee shop, the same crooked sign that read Sarah's Brew, the same light in the window, the same flickering bulb above the door. She hit the brake so hard the seatbelt locked across her chest. "No," she muttered. "No, no, no." She stared at the building through the windshield. It looked exactly as it had earlier that night, except it was backwards. the door handle on the wrong side, the neon letters reversed, like she was looking into a mirror. Her hands trembled as she stepped out of the car. The air was heavier here. She could feel it pressing against her chest, humming faintly with something electrical. Inside, the cafe was silent. The chairs were stacked neatly on the tables. The coffee machine gleamed in the half-light, and the clock on the wall ticked backward. She whispered, "Hello?" Her voice echoed strangely too many times, as though the walls were made of tunnels. Then, from the corner, came the faint sound of a spoon stirring in a cup. Metal against porcelain, a soft, steady clink. Clink, clink. She turned toward the sound. Mr. Finch was sitting at the counter. His gray suit looked damp, as if he'd been walking through fog for hours. His hands were clasped around a mug of coffee that seemed untouched. He looked up at her, confused. "Sarah?" His voice was calm, almost relieved. "You're still here." She took a step back. "Mr. Finch? You remember me?" He frowned. "Of course. Why wouldn't I?" "You don't remember yesterday?" she asked. "The argument? About the parking?" His brow furrowed. "Parking? I don't." He stopped, eyes flicking to the window, where the fog pressed thick and close. "I was trying to find my way home, but every road brought me back here." Her breath caught. "I think," he said quietly, "we're lost in the same loop." She shook her head. No, that's not possible. This is my cafe, my place. I belong here." He looked at her then, really looked, and his eyes were soft with pity. "Maybe that's why it won't let you leave." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The ticking clock wound itself backward, slow, deliberate, and wrong. Then came the sound again. Clink, clink. It wasn't coming from the counter this time. It came from behind her. Sarah turned. There was another her standing in the reflection of the cafe window, but it wasn't quite her. The mirrored Sarah's face was pale, lips slightly parted, eyes hollow, her head tilted just a fraction too slow. When Sarah lifted her hand, the reflection didn't move. It only smiled. The air seemed to twist. Mr. Finch whispered, "Don't look at it too long." But Sarah couldn't look away. The reflection began to move, even as she stood still. It stepped closer to the glass, the cafe lights flickering violently now. The sound of footsteps echoed 2 sets, then 4, then 6, as if more versions of her were moving through unseen hallways. Then the mirrored Sarah pressed her palm to the glass. Sarah's real hand began to ache, a dull, burning pain spreading across her skin like static. She looked down and saw her own reflection inside her palm, tiny and upside down, like a distorted photograph, trapped under her flesh. She screamed and stumbled back. The reflection's voice came then, soft and echoing, layered like whispers through a dream. "You said you wanted him to lose his way. You said you wished it. The road heard you, Sarah. The words are roots now. Mister." Finch stood up, backing away. What does that mean? But Sarah knew. She remembered the bitterness in her voice that morning, the curse spat through clenched teeth. "I hope you walk home and never find your way back." Her words had found a home in the air, in the walls, in the very road itself. Now, they wanted balance. She staggered toward the door, but outside, the road was gone. In its place was only fog, a mirror, smooth surface stretching endlessly in every direction. Her headlights glowed faintly, reflected over and over again into infinity. Mr. Finch called out, "Don't go out there. You'll lose yourself." But she was already running. Her shoes hit the fog like it was water, sending ripples outward. Every sound she made, her breath, her heartbeat, her footsteps came back delayed, like echoes from somewhere far away. Then, from the distance, came the sound of footsteps answering hers, not following, mirroring. She stopped. The other footsteps stopped too. The silence afterward was unbearable. Then she whispered, barely audible, "Who are you?" Her voice came back instantly, from every direction at once. "Who are you? Who are you? Who are you?" She covered her ears, screaming, but the echoes only grew louder until they weren't words anymore, just raw sound like memory tearing itself apart. And then quiet. The fog parted for just a moment. She saw herself walking toward her. The mirrored Sarah smiled gently and said, "You can rest now. I'll take care of it from here." Before she could move, the other Sarah stepped into her softly, effortlessly, as though she'd always been meant to fit there. The next thing Sarah remembered was standing behind the cafe counter, wiping down a mug. The fog was gone. The clock ticked forward again. The doorbell chimed softly. Mr. Finch walked in, smiling politely. "Morning, Sarah," he said. "The usual, please." She smiled back. "Of course, Mr. Finch." As she poured the coffee, she hummed softly. Something calm, something endless. Outside, the sun was bright. The roads were clear, but if someone looked closely at the cafe window, they might notice just for a heartbeat that the reflection behind the glass wasn't quite in sync. When Sarah turned her head, the mirrored version lagged just a second behind, and when she smiled, the reflection didn't smile back. The morning after the fog lifted, the air around Hollow Ridge felt clean again. Sunlight pooled on the pavement, glimmering through the wet leaves. Sarah's brew opened right on time, 7 a.m., sharp, just like it always did. But something was off. Not wrong. Exactly. Just off. The bell above the cafe door chimed. Its sound slightly flatter than before, as if struck through glass. The air inside was warm, scented with coffee beans and burnt sugar. Everything was in its place, the counter polished, the chalkboard updated with the day's specials. Yet there was a strange stillness, as though time had paused between one breath and the next. Sarah stood behind the counter, smiling softly at each customer, her eyes distant but kind. Her movements were careful, deliberate, as if she were repeating steps she'd already learned long ago. When she laughed, it sounded almost right. Almost. At 10:14 a.m., the door opened, and Frank, the old man with the cap and the slow, knowing smile, walked in. He ordered his usual, black, no sugar. As she poured the coffee, Sarah caught his reflection in the stainless steel pot. His expression wasn't casual today. His eyes lingered on her face, searching for something behind her calmness. "You've been quiet lately," he said. She smiled. "Busy mornings." Frank sipped his coffee and nodded slowly. "You look rested." "I feel fine," she said. "Better, actually." He chuckled, but it wasn't his usual warm laugh. "Good to hear. Not everyone who crosses that fog comes back." Sarah froze, fingers tightening around the counter's edge. Frank continued, voice softer now, almost a whisper. "Though sometimes, it's not the same person who returns." The words hung in the air, sharp as static. Sarah blinked once, twice, then she smiled again, as if she hadn't heard him at all. "Would you like a refill, Frank?" He studied her for a moment longer, then looked down at his coffee. "No," he said quietly. "That's quite enough." By afternoon, the cafe was nearly empty. A light drizzle misted the windows, smearing the world outside into gray shapes in slow motion. Sarah sat by the window, staring at the raindrops. Her reflection hovered over the street beyond, pale, faint, slightly delayed. She whispered to it, voice low, "Why did you come back?" The reflection didn't answer. It only tilted its head. She turned away quickly, feeling a tremor pass through her body, a pulse, like something deep beneath her skin, trying to move. Then came the bell again. Ding. She looked up. Mr. Finch stood in the doorway, holding an umbrella slick with rain. His suit was clean, pressed, and dry, though it had been pouring outside. "Good afternoon, Sarah," he said warmly. Her heart gave a strange lurch. "Mr. Finch, you're here early." He smiled faintly. "Yes. I found my way back this time." His eyes flicked toward the window, then back at her. "You were right about your coffee. Best in town." She nodded mechanically. "That's kind of you." But something about him was wrong too. His voice carried an echo, like it came from a place one room over. When she turned to pour his drink, she saw her reflection watching her again, this time smiling broadly, unnaturally, though she herself wasn't smiling at all. The mirrored Sarah raised her hand slowly, palm facing outward. The skin was paler than glass, and beneath it, veins pulsed like dark threads. Sarah looked down at her real hand. The veins there moved too, only they weren't veins. They were roads, tiny black roads, branching beneath her skin like a map. She gasped, dropping the mug. It shattered on the floor. Coffee spread like oil, seeping into the cracks. Mr. Finch didn't move. He only stared, eyes hollow now. "You shouldn't have spoken those words," he said softly. "You gave them shape." The bell chimed again. Frank stepped in, his cap pulled low, his hands trembling. "Sarah," he called gently. "You need to listen." But her breathing was fast now. The cafe lights flickered once, twice, and then dimmed to a golden murk. "What's happening?" she whispered. Frank's eyes were full of sorrow. "It's claiming balance. The curse always echoes back." The room began to hum. Mugs rattled on shelves. The chalkboard letters rearranged themselves, the specials blurring into nonsense. Sarah clutched her temples. "I thought I came back." "You did," Frank said. "But so did it." Then the cafe went silent. The air shimmered like heat. Outside the window, the drizzle stopped mid-fall. The raindrops hung suspended, tiny spheres of glass floating in the air. Through them, Sarah saw something moving, shapes in the reflection, people walking backward, cars sliding in reverse, shadows pacing in the fog. A mirror world, pressed against the glass. And standing on the other side, staring back, was herself, the real her, pale, frantic, pounding on the invisible barrier. The mirrored Sarah inside the cafe smiled faintly. She turned toward Frank and Mr. Finch. "Would either of you like another cup?" Frank whispered a prayer under his breath. Mr. Finch simply smiled. "I think she's perfect now." The woman behind the counter, the new Sarah, blinked slowly, as if testing her form. The reflection outside beat harder on the glass, her mouth forming silent words. "That's not me. That's not me." But her voice was gone, swallowed by the fog. That night, the cafe closed as usual. The open sign flickered off. Sarah stood by the window, looking out into the dark street. Behind her, the radio played softly, an old tune from the 1950 seconds, the kind with warmth and vinyl crackle. She hummed along, though she didn't recognize the song. Across the street, the reflection of her cafe shimmered faintly. And in that reflection, the other Sarah, the trapped one, pressed her palm against the glass. Her face was tear-streaked, her eyes pleading. Sarah tilted her head. "You should have been more careful," she whispered. "Words remember. They always do." The light above her flickered once more. Then everything stilled. Outside, Hollow Ridge fell into silence. Weak slaughter. Travelers passing through the town often stop at Sarah's brew. The coffee is rich, the atmosphere comforting, in an old-world sort of way. But sometimes, when they stay but too late, when the fog begins to creep down the road and the last train has already left, they say the air changes. The lights grow dimmer, and if you look into the cafe window, you might see two Sarahs. One smiling, wiping down the counter, and another standing behind the glass, mouthing silent words no one can hear. The regulars don't talk about it. Frank still comes every morning. He never stays long. He always leaves exact change on the counter. Never a tip, never a word more than needed. And every time he goes, he whispers under his breath, "The road remembers." Story 2. The final dial tone. At 11:59 p.m., Ryan's landline phone rang. He'd been waiting for that sound all night, but not like this. Because the call didn't come from the hospital. It came from someone who wasn't supposed to be breathing anymore. The city outside his window looked half asleep, soaked in sodium light and mist. Rain had come earlier, not enough to wash the streets clean, just enough to make everything shimmer, restless, and damp. Inside his apartment, Ryan sat at the kitchen table, one elbow pressed into the wood, a mug of untouched coffee cooling by his wrist. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. 11:45. He'd been staring at the same crack in the ceiling for nearly an hour. On the table lay a hospital pamphlet, folded and refolded until its edges had gone soft. Street Mary's Medical Critical Care Unit, East Wing. That's where Lily was. His little sister, 23 years old, too young for words like failure or critical condition to belong anywhere near her name. The doctors had told him it was sudden, a rare infection, a chain reaction of things no one could predict. She'd been fine that morning. She'd texted him a picture of her coffee foam art shaped like a heart and teased him for oversleeping. By evening, she was in an ambulance. By midnight, she was in surgery. And now he was waiting for a phone call that might tell him whether she'd live or die. The apartment felt too quiet, as though it were listening with him. Every sound became magnified. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft drip of the bathroom faucet, the whisper of the wind against the glass, the kind of silence that feels crowded. He turned off his cell phone hours ago. The only line open now was the landline, an old rotary-style phone that had belonged to their parents. He'd kept it for sentimental reasons, though it barely worked. Lily used to call him from that same phone when they were kids, from the upstairs bedroom to the living room, just to whisper ghost stories. She loved that scratchy click between rings, the faint echo of distance, even across a hallway. Landlines sound more real, she'd once said, like the dead could still get through if they tried hard enough. He'd laugh then. But tonight, the thought didn't make him laugh. 11:55. He rubbed his eyes and glanced at the clock again. No news. No ring. He'd called the hospital around 10:30. The nurse had told him Lily was stable, still in the operating room. We'll call as soon as we know more. Those words have been looping in his head ever since. As soon as we know more. He pictured the sterile lights, the beeping monitors, the shadowy movements behind glass. He'd been there earlier, sitting in the hallway, watching the double doors open and close as if the entire building were breathing. He remembered the sound of the intercom calling for Dr. Hahn to OR 2. He remembered the smell of antiseptic, and he remembered that awful moment when they told him to go home. He hadn't wanted to, but there was nothing to do except wait. At 11:58, the clock ticked louder. He could hear it between his ribs. He stood up, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain aside. Outside, the city was empty. A few parked cars, a blinking traffic light turning yellow to red and back again. No movement. And then, the phone rang. A sudden, brittle sound that seemed to split the air in half. He froze. His pulse jumped. Once, twice. Then he moved, 3 steps across the kitchen. The phone sat on the counter, its black cord coiled like a sleeping snake. He picked it up. Hello? A pause. Static. And then, Ryan? His stomach dropped. Lily? Yeah, the voice whispered. It's cold here. The line crackled faintly, a distant hum underneath her words. He felt dizzy. Lily, where are you? Are you at the hospital? Are you okay? She was crying softly. They're trying to make me warm again. My feet are freezing. Who's there with you? They said I could call you. Just for a minute. Lily, listen to me. What room are you in? I'm coming right now. A pause. Then, quietly, the waiting room. In the back. The line went silent. Lily. Static. And then, the click of a receiver hanging up. He stared at the phone, his heart pounding. The clock read 11:59. He grabbed his cell phone from the counter and dialed the hospital. Street Mary's Medical, how may I? This is Ryan Collins. My sister Lily is in surgery there. I just got a call. She said she's cold. Sir? The nurse interrupted gently. Lily Collins? Yes. She's in stable condition right now. Her temperature dropped, but we're warming her feet. She's sedated. You must have misunderstood something. He closed his eyes, relief crashing through him like a wave. She's okay. For now, yes. The doctor will update you soon. I exhaled, shaky, dizzy. Thank you. He hung up and sat down at the table, covering his face with both hands. A long, trembling breath. Then another. Maybe it had been a dream, a hallucination born of exhaustion and fear. But the words lingered in his head. They said I could call you. Just for a minute. At 12:01, the phone rang again. This time, it was his cell. He answered immediately. Hello? Mr. Collins? It was a doctor's voice. Male, calm, clinical. Yes. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. Lily passed away at 1 a.m. We did everything we could. Ryan's world went silent. He heard his own breathing, shallow, mechanical. The clock ticking, the faint hum of the refrigerator. His eyes drifted toward the landline on the counter. The receiver was still slightly warm. He didn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m., he opened the call log on his phone. There was only one entry, the doctor's call. Nothing before it. He checked the landline's memory. The last recorded call had been 2 days ago. 11:59 wasn't there. No missed call. No record. As if it had never happened. But he remembered the voice. He remembered every word, and the way she'd said, the waiting room. At dawn, Ryan drove to the hospital. The world outside was gray, thin light seeping through clouds. The hallways of Street Mary's smelled of bleach and coffee. He walked past the reception desk, past the vending machines, until he reached the end of the east wing, the surgery floor. A nurse recognized him. Mr. Collins, I'm so sorry for your loss. He nodded vaguely. His voice was barely a whisper. Where's the waiting room? The one in the back? She frowned. There isn't one back there. The old wing was closed years ago. He stared at her. Closed? She nodded. It's been sealed off since the renovation. There's no phone line, no access. Just storage now. He wandered down the hallway anyway. The air grew colder the farther he went. At the end of the corridor stood a locked door with frosted glass. Through it, faint shapes, old chairs, broken machines, stacked boxes, and on the wall beside the door, half buried under peeling paint, was a phone jack. No cord, no handset, just the base. He pressed his palm against it, and for a moment, just a moment, he thought he heard something through the metal. A faint click, then a single tone, soft and steady. Beep, beep. He left the hospital just before sunrise. The streets were empty again, washed pale by the early light. When he got home, the phone on the counter rang one last time. He didn't move, didn't answer, just listened. The sound was slower this time, hollow, as if the ring were echoing from far away. Then silence. Then a faint dial tone, dragging on and on, until it dissolved into static. Ryan didn't sleep that night. He didn't even try. He sat on the couch, still in the same clothes from earlier, staring at the silent phone sitting on the table. The room was soaked in a low amber light from the lamp he hadn't turned off, as if switching it off might invite something back. Outside, the city had gone quiet, that peculiar stillness between 2 and 3 a.m., when even the traffic lights seemed to blink slower. He kept replaying the sound of her voice. I'm cold. They're trying to warm my feet. It wasn't just that it sounded like her, it was her. The tiny catch in her throat when she was nervous. The way her vowels curled upward like she was apologizing for even speaking. He could still hear the trembling of her breath against the line. But the call didn't exist. He checked the phone's call log again. He scrolled down, up, restarted it twice. There were no entries between 10:37 p.m. When he called the hospital for an update, and 12:01 a.m., when the doctor had called to say she was gone. Between those two times was a void, a hole, and somehow, in that void, she had spoken to him. By morning, Ryan's eyes burned red. The first sunlight creeping through the blinds only deepened the fatigue bruising under his eyes. He forced himself up, showered, dressed in yesterday's clothes again. He didn't want to look at the mirror too long. Something about his own reflection felt off, like the man staring back was studying him, waiting for a mistake. The hospital's fluorescent corridors hummed like an electric hive. Every step echoed as if the walls were listening. At the reception, the nurse gave him the kind of look people reserve for the grieving, soft, deliberate, filled with too much pity to be real. "I'm here for Lily Harper." The nurse nodded, typing something. "Of course, Mr. Harper. The doctor said you might come by. We moved her to the preparation room for now." The words slid past him like oil. Preparation. Such a clean, neutral word for what it meant. He didn't want to see her, not yet. What he wanted were answers. He cleared his throat. "Could you check something for me? Around midnight, did anyone from this number?" He slid a scrap of paper with his landline number across the counter. "Try to call here?" The nurse frowned, squinting at the number. "No, we wouldn't normally call that late unless there was an emergency." "There was," Ryan said. His voice cracked slightly. "But not from you. I got a call from her. At 11:59. The nurse's expression faltered. "Sir, that's not possible." "I know how it sounds." She hesitated, then checked the logs on her screen. The light from the monitor reflected on her glasses, hiding her eyes. After a moment, she shook her head. No calls went out from the hospital phones to that number at that time. Ryan exhaled slowly, forcing a smile that didn't fit his face. "Right. Of course." As he turned to leave, the nurse called softly after him. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Harper." He nodded without looking back. The first funeral preparations blurred together the forms, the condolences, the silent pauses. Everyone said the same things. "She's in a better place. She's at peace now. She's watching over you." But none of them had heard her voice at 11:59. None of them knew what that sounded like. By the time he got home that night, the air in the apartment felt thicker, heavier, as though the walls themselves were absorbing the sorrow. He left the lights off. The phone sat exactly where he'd left it. The coiled wire hung from its base like a limp vein. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, stared at the dark liquid for a long time, then tossed it back. "It's just stress," he muttered. "Shock does strange things." He almost believed it, until the phone rang again. A sharp, metallic trill that sliced through the stillness like a blade. He froze. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then, silence. He stood motionless, hand hovering inches above the receiver. His heart thudded so hard, he thought it might shake the floor. When the 4th ring came, he snatched the phone up. "Hello?" Static. A faint hiss, like someone breathing through a wool blanket. Then a whisper. "Ryan?" His stomach turned to ice. It was Lily's voice again, but not the same. Softer, slower, like someone trying to remember how words worked. "Lily? Lily, where are you?" A pause. Then, "I'm still cold." He swallowed hard. "Where are you calling from? Are you at the hospital?" A rustle, faint, like fabric moving against metal. I tried to wait, but it's so dark." "Lily, please listen to me. What do you see? Can you tell me anything?" For a moment, all he could hear was her shallow breathing. Then, "There's a window, but no glass, just the sound of air." Ryan's grip tightened on the receiver. "I'm coming, tell me where." But before she could answer, the line went dead. He didn't remember leaving the apartment. Didn't remember grabbing his coat or car keys. He only remembered the drive headlights cutting through the empty streets. The rain starting to fall in heavy, uneven sheets. The hospital loomed out of the fog like a memory half forgotten. When he burst through the emergency doors, the night shift clerk nearly jumped from her seat. Sir, we're closed to visitors." Someone's in the building. My sister, she's... He couldn't finish. His throat closed around the words. The clerk's expression softened. Mr. Harper, right? We already spoke earlier. There's no one here at this hour except staff. Then check. Please, just check the phones. She called me again. The clerk's brows knit together, half pity, half irritation. Mr. Harper, your sister passed away 2 nights ago. I'm sorry, but the elevator doors behind her dinged. Both of them turned. No one was there. But the indicator light blinked down from the 3rd floor to the lobby. The clerk frowned. Strange. Maintenance was supposed to shut those off. Ryan was already moving. Sir, you can't go up there. The elevator doors closed behind him before she could stop him. The ride up felt endless. The hum of the motor, the flickering light overhead, his reflection in the brushed metal walls pale, jittering, fractured by the shifting glare. He remembered visiting Lily when she was alive, floor 3, room 312. She'd always joked that the hospital smelled like time that had stopped moving. When the doors opened, the corridor stretched before him, pale, sterile, and wrongly quiet. All the lights were dimmed, except for one flickering bulb near the end of the hall. Room 312. He walked toward it slowly, the soles of his shoes whispering against the waxed floor. The door was ajar. Inside, the bed was neatly made. Sheets tucked, pillow fluffed, empty, except for the phone. A black corded phone sat on the bedside table. He stared at it, feeling the air in the room tighten. Then, softly clicked the line engaged. A faint hum filled the silence. He stepped closer, lifted the receiver. Hello? Nothing, just that low, electric murmur. Then, faintly, through the static, "You shouldn't have come." Ryan froze. "Who's there?" "Not your sister," the voice whispered. "But she's close." The line went dead. He dropped the receiver, stumbling backward. The sound of the phone clicking repeatedly filled the room, as if the call were trying to restart itself. He turned to leave and caught a glimpse of movement in the window. A reflection. Lily, standing behind him, her face pale, her eyes wide and glassy. Her lips moved soundlessly, forming his name. He spun around, but the room was empty. When he looked back at the window, the reflection was gone. He drove home in silence, soaked, shaking. His mind refused to process what he'd seen. By the time he reached his apartment, dawn was clawing at the horizon. He left the door unlocked, too tired to care. Inside, the air smelled faintly of ozone, that sharp metallic scent that follows a thunderstorm. The phone sat quietly on the table. He almost laughed. Maybe I imagined all of it. Maybe grief can make the world lie to you. He reached out, brushing the receiver lightly, and flinched. It was warm. He froze. The phone rang once, then again, then a 3rd time. This time, he didn't pick up. He watched as the ringing continued, steady, patient, as if it knew he was there. Finally, the sound cut off. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Then the answering machine clicked on, a long hiss. Then, Lily's voice whispering, distorted, fragile. "Ryan, I can see you now." "Hey." The message ended with the faint, unmistakable tone of a heartbeat monitor. One single beep and then nothing. For the next 3 nights, Ryan didn't leave the apartment. He barely slept, barely ate. The phone, that heavy, silent thing on the table, became the only object in the room that felt alive. He'd moved it from the corner to the center of the coffee table, set a small tape recorder next to it, and waited. Every few hours, he'd test it, pick it up, listen for a dial tone. Sometimes, there was nothing. Other times, there was static. Not white noise exactly. Something under it. Something moving. It wasn't until the 2nd night that he realized what he was hearing weren't random bursts of interference, but words. Barely audible syllables buried in the hum. "Ryan, stay." Still cold. When he replayed the recording, there was nothing but hiss. But when he played it in the dark, late at night, without headphones, he could swear he heard her again. At first, he told himself it was grief, auditory hallucination, his brain trying to fill in the silence. But by the third night, things began to bleed into reality. He woke around 3 a.m. to a faint click, click, click sound. Not the phone this time. Something else. He sat up, heart pounding, scanning the room. The TV was turning itself on and off, not fully, just enough for the screen to flicker with bursts of static before dying again. He got up slowly, unplugged it. The screen went black, but the reflection, his reflection, didn't fade. It stayed there for a moment longer than it should have. A faint shimmer of light where no light should be. Lily? The reflection tilted its head, and then it was gone. Ryan started making notes, timestamps, patterns, anything. He wanted to prove it wasn't madness, that there was an order beneath the chaos. He began to notice something strange about the calls. They always came around the same time, between 11:57 and 12:03. And every time, before the phone rang, there was a faint hum in the apartment, like a generator winding up somewhere below the floor. He checked every outlet, every vent, nothing. The hum, he realized, was coming from the phone line itself. He pressed his ear against the receiver once. Before the ring, he could hear faint footsteps, as if someone were walking through snow. Then a woman's voice whispered, right into his ear, "You're listening in the wrong direction." He threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a sharp crack, the receiver snapping off, but the dial tone kept humming. By morning, Ryan looked like a man who hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. His skin had gone pale, his stubble uneven, his eyes hollowed by insomnia. He started to notice distortions beyond the phone mirrors, warping faintly when he passed, reflections in glass that didn't move the same way he did. Once, when he opened his refrigerator, he swore the reflection in the metal door, smiled back a second, too late. And yet, in all that madness, one thing felt real. Lily's voice. He needed to know where it was coming from. He spent the day researching temporal calls, phantom transmissions, anything that might explain what was happening. Most of it was junk. Conspiracy sites, forums with users claiming to have heard the dead through copper lines. But one post stood out. The dead don't speak through phones. The phones speak through the dead. Static is memory, trapped in the current. Listen closely, and it listens back. The post was signed only with an initial, F. Something in his chest tightened. Bats Frank. He hadn't thought of the old man in weeks, the one who used to sit in the corner of the cafe, sipping burnt coffee and muttering about bad omens. Words travel, he had said once, but echoes, they choose who to return to. At the time, Ryan thought he was just rambling. Now, he wasn't so sure. He found the cafe's number, dialed it. The line rang twice. Then a voice picked up. Morning Brew Cafe. This is Ryan Harper. I'm trying to reach Frank, older man, usually there in the mornings. A pause. Oh, you must mean old Frank. I'm sorry, sir. Frank passed away last week. Ryan's mouth went dry. When? Wednesday night. Found him right here, sitting at his usual table, phone in his hand. That night, Ryan unplugged his landline. He ripped the wire out of the wall. He even wrapped the phone in a blanket and shoved it into a drawer. But at 11:59, the ringing began again, muffled at first, but unmistakable. The sound came from inside the drawer. He yanked it open. The phone was dark, not connected to anything, yet the receiver was vibrating like something inside it was trying to get out. He hesitated, then lifted it to his ear. Ryan. He dropped it instantly. The voice that came through was not Lily's. It was deeper, cracked, like wood splitting. You took her call, the voice said. Now the line is open. What are you? He whispered. The line hissed, then shifted, static rising and falling like breathing. She's trying to reach you from where words decay. What does that mean? She's between signals now. Between then and now. The static grew louder, drowning out the voice. Ryan pulled the receiver away, but the sound kept rising until it filled the entire room. The lamps flickered. The air smelled of metal and dust, and beneath the static he heard Lily's voice again, faint, pleading. "Don't listen to him. Please, Ryan. Hang up." He slammed the receiver down. The lights went out. When they came back on, everything in the apartment looked shifted. The furniture was in the same place, but slightly off angle. The clock on the wall ticked backward for 3 seconds before catching up, and his reflection in the dark window was staring at him. It blinked. He stepped closer. The reflection leaned forward too, but slower, like it was thinking about it first. He reached out, and the reflection's hand didn't move. Instead, it lifted the receiver of a phone that wasn't in his world. Ryan froze. From behind the glass, his reflection mouthed something. He leaned closer, trying to read the lips. 3 words. "Answer the call." Then the window shattered inward. He woke up on the floor, gasping. The glass from the window was scattered around him. Outside, the streetlights flickered in and out. He reached for his phone, but it wasn't on the table anymore. It was in his hand. He didn't remember picking it up. The line was open, and on the other end, faintly, he heard breathing. A woman's voice whispered, "Ryan, you're so close. Please, just one more call." He recognized the voice instantly, but it wasn't Lily's anymore. It was almost Lily's. Like a perfect imitation, one frequency away from being real. He closed his eyes, trembling. "Where are you? You'll see. But first, you have to remember." "Remember what?" The moment she stopped breathing, the static swelled, and Ryan clutched the phone tighter, shaking. Through the noise, he heard faint sounds, hospital monitors, footsteps, a heart rate slowing, then his own voice, recorded somehow, saying, "It's okay, Lily. You can rest now." He froze, because he never said that. He was home when she died. The sound continued, and this time, he heard something else in the background. A male voice. Calm, measured. Time of death. 11:59 p.m. Ryan's heart stopped. He checked the clock on his wall. 11:59分. The static cut out abruptly. The silence afterward felt unnatural, like the world itself had stopped breathing. Then, faintly, he heard a dial tone, only it wasn't coming from the phone anymore. It was coming from inside the walls. The entire apartment seemed to vibrate with the sound low, rhythmic, echoing. He stumbled backward, gripping the edge of the table. The hum built and built until it became a single high-pitched whine, and then a voice spoke through every speaker, every wire, every surface in the room. "Time isn't what you think it is, Ryan. She didn't die after the call." He stared at the phone. The line clicked once. Then a recording, his own voice again, whispered, "She called you from the moment she died." And then came Lily's final words, clearer than ever. "Don't follow the sound, Ryan. It's not me calling anymore." And the connection broke with a single sharp tone, a tone that didn't end. It just kept ringing faint, endless, bleeding into the air until it sounded less like a phone and more like the echo of a heartbeat that refused to stop. The 4th night, Maya sat alone in the recording booth. On the desk before her, the old radio she'd taken from the storage room sat silent. She'd played back the recording from the previous night, the whisper, and noticed something strange. The signal's frequency didn't exist. It wasn't part of any FM range broadcasted in the city. It came from a gap, a blank space between real frequencies. She turned the dial again. Static flared, then vanished. And then, a voice came through her own voice. "This is Maya. If anyone can hear this, I'm trapped in the signal." Her chest tightened. It was her, down to the tone, the breath, the hesitation, but she had never said that. She checked the clock. 2:33 a.m., the same hour. Every time the whisper returned, the desk lamp flickered. Her screen lit up by itself, showing the waveform of a live recording flat, unbroken. Not silence, not sound, just a dead line. Then came another noise. Slow, heavy, rhythmic. A heartbeat. Maya leaned closer. Thump, thump. It matched the beat of her own pulse. Then the voice spoke again. Not whispered this time. Calm, clear, familiar. Don't turn off the radio. If you do, you won't come back. Her throat went dry. It was her voice again, but warped, stretched, echoing like it came from deep underground. She hit record. The voice grew louder, more urgent. If you turn it off, you'll hear them. They're looking for you. They want to pull you down. Maya's breath hitched. In the window's reflection, she saw someone standing behind her. She turned nothing. Then the microphone light blinked red, signaling that the system was live. No one had touched it. Two voices came through now, overlapping her present self, and the other her inside the frequency. I'm here. I can hear myself too. So can I. But here they don't let me leave. Her heart pounded. She pressed every button, but the console was frozen. The signal grew stronger, lights dimmed, until only the red on-air sign glowed in the darkness. Then footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Across the wooden floor toward the mic. Step. 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 A breath brushed her ear. Don't let the frequency die. She spun around, light in hand, and saw it. Herself sitting on the opposite side of the glass. Pale-faced, eyes hollow, lips moving silently as if still broadcasting. The voice said, "If you can hear me, it means we're on the same frequency." She stumbled backward, tripping over cables. The radio crackled, sparking faintly, and now dozens of voices layered into the static. Stay. Stay with us. Maya yanked the power cord. Silence. Then 3 sharp knocks echoed through the speakers. Cock. 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 Her intro signal. The same rhythm she always used to open her nightly show. Except tonight, she hadn't gone live. In the dark glass, her reflection warped, its mouth curling into a grin while hers remained still. Now you won't have to broadcast anymore. They'll do it for you. The static roared back, shaking the booth. Sound became gravity pulling at her body, drawing her toward the radio. She screamed, but her voice didn't come out. Only the sound waves distorted, heavy pulling her inside. And then nothing. The next morning, the day shift technician opened the booth. Everything looked normal, except the mic light still glowing red. A voice came through the monitor. Hoarse, looping endlessly. "This is Maya, dead frequency. If you can hear me, don't change the channel." From that night on, at 2:33 a.m., Manor Station 104.3 FM would sometimes come alive for a few seconds, just long enough to replay that final message before vanishing again from the airwaves. And some listeners swear that if you turn the volume all the way up, you can still hear a heartbeat under the static, steady human, as if someone's still alive on the other side of the signal. The radio station had been silent for 3 weeks. The management issued a short announcement. Due to technical issues, our nightly program, Echoes of Midnight, will be temporarily suspended. No mention of Maya. No memorial. No closure. But the night janitor, Ellis, knew something was wrong. Every night at 2:33 a.m., the same time Maya's last broadcast ended, the studio lights flickered, and the red on-air sign glowed faintly for exactly 7 seconds before dying out again. He thought it was a power glitch. Until the 7th night. That night, when the light came on, he heard her voice. Soft, breathing between words. Testing. 1, 2, 3. "Can you hear me?" Ellis froze. His mop hit the floor. "Maya," he whispered. Static answered, low and trembling. "Don't say my name. It keeps me here." The microphone light blinked once. Then again, the sound returned faint, distorted like a recording played backward. "They listen when you listen." Ellis stepped closer. Through the soundproof glass, the booth was empty. But on the other side, a chair turned slowly on its own. Then the radio came alive. The voice now spoke through the speakers, no longer Maya's tone. Something deeper, layered, like 1,000 whispers pressed together. "We found her. She spoke to us. She called the signal home. Ellis stumbled back. Every speaker in the hallway turned on simultaneously. The building hummed. He covered his ears, but the sound wasn't outside, it was inside his skull. Through the static, he heard her clearer now, like she was right beside him. Ellis, tell them. I came back. He looked up. The reflection in the booth glass showed two silhouettes. One was his. The other, standing just behind him, was hers. She looked drained, translucent, as if she were made of mist and memory. Her eyes shimmered like light caught in water. Maya, he whispered. Don't, she said, shaking her head. If you say my name again, I stay. He stared, trembling. What do you want me to do? Finish the broadcast. End the loop. Ellis swallowed hard. He stepped into the booth. The smell of dust and old metal filled the air. The equipment lit up automatically. Dials spun. Meters jumped. The script on the console, Maya's last one, was still there, untouched. He took a deep breath. Sat down. The mic glowed red. This is Ellis, he began, filling in for Maya tonight. As his voice went out over the air, a faint hum started beneath it, the same heartbeat rhythm Maya once heard. The studio temperature dropped. Then, between the words, her voice merged with his. They spoke in unison. You're listening to the final frequency, the place where echoes go when the living stop listening. Every light in the building turned white hot, then snapped off. The broadcast cut mid-sentence. The next morning, the radio returned to normal programming. No one mentioned Maya. No one mentioned Ellis. But employees swore they saw his reflection in the booth glass when they passed at night, head bowed over the console, hands still resting on the mic. Listeners reported one final transmission. Days later, a calm female voice, neither quite alive nor gone, spoke over soft static. This is Maya, broadcasting from the other side. If you hear this, don't answer. Just listen. Then a faint laugh, a sigh, and the sound of a click, like an old rotary phone being set back on its cradle. The dial tone stretched, looping endlessly, until it wasn't a tone anymore. It was a heartbeat, and beneath it, a whisper only those alone at midnight could hear. The line is still open. Story 3. The final scenic drive. I've always believed that every town looks beautiful at night, even the dying ones. The lights blur into ribbons, the air smells cleaner, and the roads feel like they're waiting just for you. That's why I like driving after midnight. It's quiet, peaceful, and tonight, it's my last scenic drive. There's something about this road I've always loved. The asphalt glimmers like spilled ink under the headlights, and the trees lean in, whispering their approval. I roll the window down, and the cool wind brushes my face gentle, forgiving, the kind of night that feels like it's letting you go easy. I tell myself I deserve this. A break, a small adventure. Just me, the road, and the hum of the engine keeping rhythm with my heartbeat. I even brought my favorite song playlist, the one I used to play on trips with her. Funny thing, though, I can't quite remember the last time we drove together. Was it last fall? Or the year before that? I remember her hand out the window, catching the air, laughing like she could hold the whole sky. That laugh, it's been echoing in my head all week. The highway sign flashes by. Scenic Route 19, last exit 2 miles. That's my cue. The final stretch. I smile to myself. One last ride, I whisper. The road curves, pulling me toward the outskirts where the streetlights give up and shadows take over. The kind of dark that doesn't scare you anymore, just welcomes you. There's a small diner I pass every night. The open sign is flickering, but no cars are parked outside. I almost stop for coffee, but something in me says keep going. It's strange, the way your instincts know when you're not meant to linger. I glance at the dashboard clock. 11:47 p.m. Plenty of time. The town fades behind me. The road opens up, lined by endless cornfields. There's no moon tonight, only the faint outline of clouds swallowing the stars. The world feels muffled like I'm driving inside a dream, and maybe I am. The phone buzzes beside me. A text. I ignore it. Then another, and another. The sound grows irritating, so I finally glance down. All the messages are from the same number, Mom. I don't read them. I just turn the phone face down. The glow feels too sharp against the dark. It's funny how she still worries about me driving late. I'm 34, not a teenager anymore. She doesn't realize I've been driving like this every night this week. Same route, same playlist, same empty highway. Except tonight feels different. The wind picks up, cold enough to sting. I check the rearview mirror out of habit. For a moment, I swear I see headlights behind me, but when I blink, they're gone. Just black road stretching into forever. I laugh quietly. "You're losing it, man," I mutter. Too much coffee, but something about that darkness behind me, it isn't empty. It feels thick, like the air's watching, like the shadows are waiting for me to notice them. I turn up the music. The singer croons about leaving, about finding peace at the end of the line. I hum along, tapping the steering wheel. My fingers are trembling. Maybe it's the cold. I pass a wooden sign half hidden by weeds. "Thank you for visiting Cedar Grove." Except Cedar Grove was the town I left 20 minutes ago. You blink. Check the odometer. The numbers haven't moved. No, that can't be right. I look out the window. The same diner. The same flickering sign. Still no cars. Still open. My chest tightens. I pull over, engine idling, and rub my eyes. Maybe I missed a turn, I whisper. Maybe I looped back somehow. But deep down, I know I didn't. I've driven this road for years. There's no loop. There's no way back to Cedar Grove once you take Route 19. Still, I put the car in reverse, half laughing, half panicking. The tires crunch on gravel. I look for the sign again, but it's gone. The field behind it is gone too. All that's left is the road. Straight ahead, black as ink. The music stops mid-verse, just cuts out. The silence is so sudden. I can hear my own breathing, shaky and uneven. For a long moment, I just sit there, listening. Then, faintly, from somewhere behind me, a sound. The second car? No. It's softer, slower, like footsteps. I grip the steering wheel. My pulse drums in my ears. But when I turn, there's no one there. Only the faint shape of the road disappearing into nothing. I should go home, I think. But when I picture home, I can't quite remember what it looks like. The walls, the windows, the front door. It all blurs together. A strange calm settles over me, like the quiet before rain. I shift gears and start driving again. The tires hum softly against the asphalt. The road narrows, flanked by pines that seem to lean closer every mile. After a while, I see it again, the sign. "Thank you for visiting Cedar Grove." But this time, there's something different. Underneath the words, scratched in with what looks like a nail, are 3 smaller ones. "Keep going forward." I don't know why, but that makes me smile. It feels right. So I keep driving. And in the dark reflection of the windshield, I think I see her sitting in the passenger seat again, smiling that same easy smile. She doesn't speak, but I hear her voice anyway. Faint and tender. "You're almost there." I nod, almost tearful. "Yeah," I whisper back. "Almost there." The car hums on. The road endless ahead. The world softening at the edges. Everything feels lighter, easier, like I'm finally on the right path. And somewhere, just out of sight, the sound of a distant clock begins to tick. The car drifts along the 2-lane highway like it remembers where it's going, even if I don't. The headlights carve tunnels through the mist, catching the silver edges of the guardrail as the world narrows into one long, unending breath. The radio crackles again. Faint, static bleeding between stations. For a while, I think it's nothing, just interference. The kind that happens when you drive too far from town. But then, beneath the noise, I hear a voice. Soft. Familiar. "Don't forget to keep your eyes on the road, Rye." My grip tightens on the steering wheel. No one has called me Rye in years. Not since her. I glance at the passenger seat. It's empty, but the air feels warm there, not just the kind of warmth from the heater, but the warmth of someone breathing beside you. I swallow hard. You're just tired, I murmur to myself. That's all. You've been driving too long. Still, I can't help glancing again, and that's when I notice it. There's a cup of coffee in the cup holder half full, steam still curling off the rim. I didn't buy coffee tonight. My heart skips. I reach for it, hesitating just before my fingers touch the paper cup. The heat feels real, tangible. I pull my hand back quickly, like it's burned me. A quiet laugh slips through the static. You always let it go cold before you drink it. I slam the radio off. The silence that follows is worse, because now I can hear her breathing slow, steady, right beside me. For a long stretch of road, I drive without looking. My eyes fixed dead ahead, the way you do when you're pretending something isn't there. The trees blur by, tall and watchful. The road curves, and I almost miss it. I flick on the high beams. The mist parts like curtains revealing a wooden sign ahead. Scenic overlook, 1 mile. I let out a shaky laugh. Guess this is it, I whisper. One last view. The road climbs higher now, the turns sharper. My ears pop from the altitude. It feels like I'm driving toward the sky itself. And then, I feel it a light touch against my wrist. Fingers cold, but familiar. Slow down, she says gently. You're driving too fast. I can't look at her. I don't dare. Where were you? I ask instead, my voice breaking. All this time? She doesn't answer right away. Just leans closer. I can feel her presence, the ghost of her perfume, the way she used to smell when the wind tangled through her hair. You left me, she says at last. I waited. I thought you'd turn back. My throat tightens. I grip the wheel so hard my knuckles ache. No, I whisper. You're the one who... The words die in my mouth, because suddenly I remember the rain that night, the flash of headlights, the sound of metal folding. My vision blurs. The car veers slightly, tires scraping the shoulder before I pull it back. The engine growls in protest. It's okay, she says softly. You can stop now. You've been driving for so long. And the static returns, seeping from the radio even though it's turned off. It fills the car like fog, thick and trembling, and beneath it a whispering choir. Turn back, turn back, turn back. I shake my head. I can't. You know I can't. The headlights catch something in the distance, a shape standing by the guardrail. A figure. For a second, I think it's another driver, stranded or lost. But as I get closer, the details sharpen a man, head tilted, holding something in his hand. A camera. The flash blinds me. White light floods the windshield, and when it fades, the figure is gone. My pulse hammers. Did you see that? I ask, but she doesn't reply. The only sound is her slow, even breathing, and the ticking of the dashboard clock. 11:58 p.m. How long have I been driving? It feels like hours, or maybe minutes. The line between them blurs. The road begins to narrow again, winding through the trees. The branches arch overhead, forming a tunnel of darkness that swallows the world behind me. I finally dare to glance to the right. She's there now. Not a ghost, not a memory, just her, the way I remember. Her hair loose, her face pale in the dashboard glow. She's smiling faintly, like she's proud of me. You found the road again, she says. My voice trembles. Where does it go? She turns her eyes toward the windshield. And for the first time, her smile falters. Forward. And the word hangs heavy. Final. I want to ask more, but something catches my attention. Outside the window, shapes flicker between the trees. Headlights. Rear lights. Dozens of cars, parked haphazardly along the roadside. Every one of them is empty. Doors open. Engines off. As I pass, I recognize a few. A red pickup that used to belong to my old neighbor. A blue sedan I could swear I saw abandoned years ago. Each one sits facing the same direction toward the overlook ahead. The road crests a hill. The view opens up, endless black stretching to the horizon. The overlook railing gleams in the light. This is it. I pull over. Engine idling. The world is silent, except for the faint chirp of crickets and the steady hum of the motor. "Do you remember what you said that night?" she asks quietly. I nod slowly. "Yeah, say it again." My voice shakes. "I said, if there's another side to all this, I'll meet you there." She smiles. "And you kept driving." I turn to her, because I didn't know the way. Her expression softens, sadness pooling in her eyes. "You do now." Outside, the fog thickens. The edge of the overlook is barely visible. Something about it looks inviting. Gentle, I open the door. The night air rushes in, sharp and clean. For a moment, it smells like rain again the way it did that night. She steps out first, her feet making no sound on the gravel. Her form flickers faintly, like a reflection on water. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she whispers. "All that space, all that quiet." I nod. My heart feels calm, too calm. Behind us, the car engine continues to hum. Headlights cutting through the fog like two soft eyes watching us go. I take a step toward the edge. The air hums faintly, not with wind, but with something deeper. The same vibration I felt the first time I drove out here. The same pull. She reaches out her hand. "You're not alone anymore, Rye." And when her fingers touch, I realize she's warm, warmer than I remember. The last thing I hear before everything fades is the sound of the car radio clicking back on. The same song, the same verse. And the road just goes on forever. The headlights flicker once, then twice, and as the car rolls gently forward, swallowed by the fog, the voice on the radio whispers one last thing. "Thank you for visiting Cedar Grove." The rain had thinned into a silver mist, soft and endless, as the road stretched forward like a vein of glass. The headlights cut through the fog, revealing nothing but silence. Ryan leaned forward, his fingers tight around the wheel, his breath steady but shallow. The song on the radio had long since ended. Now, only static filled the car, a low pulsing hum that rose and fell like something alive. He checked the rearview mirror again. No one. No lights. Yet, the unease remained that deep, gnawing certainty that someone else was there. He turned down the volume. For a moment, the world was perfectly still. Then, from somewhere far behind him, a horn blared, one long sharp note that sliced through the mist. Ryan's eyes darted up, nothing in sight, just empty highway. He pressed the gas pedal. The car groaned, engine humming louder as he picked up speed. But then another horn, closer this time. And with it, a flicker of headlights in the fog, only visible for a heartbeat before disappearing. Ryan's chest tightened. He muttered to himself, "Someone's following me." He switched lanes. The road felt longer now, stretched thin by distance and tension. When he glanced to the side, the fog seemed to pulse like it was breathing. He slowed down, trying to get a better look behind. The headlights appeared again. Two orbs of pale light, steady this time, keeping pace with him. He couldn't tell how far they were. Maybe 30 meters, maybe 3. They didn't dim. They didn't flash. They just stayed. Ryan reached for his phone, his thumb hovering over the emergency number. But then he hesitated. What would he even say? That he was being followed on an empty highway by a car that might not exist? Instead, he put the phone down and whispered, "It's fine. Just drive." The lights behind him grew brighter. Then they blinked out completely. He blinked hard, eyes straining against the fog. Nothing. The highway was a ghost road again. Ryan's pulse slowed, just a little. He exhaled, rubbed his temples, and laughed nervously. "Just tired, man. That's all. You're just..." Then, from the passenger seat beside him, a voice quiet, almost a sigh. You missed the turn. Ryan jerked the wheel, nearly swerving off the lane. Who's there? He shouted. Silence. He turned his head slowly. The seat beside him was empty. But the seatbelt, it was buckled. The faint impression of weight pressed against the leather. Ryan's breath caught. He unbuckled his own seatbelt, leaning closer. The buckle beside him clicked softly, as if someone had just undone it. The car filled with the faint scent of perfume familiar. Lily's perfume. He froze. No, he whispered. No, it can't be. The radio crackled. Static gave way to faint, broken speech, a whisper under the distortion. I was cold. But it's warm here now. Ryan slammed the power button, but the radio stayed on. The dials spun on their own, searching through frequencies, until they landed on a faint melody, the same lullaby he used to sing to Lily when she was scared of the dark. The lights behind him reappeared now impossibly close. He could see the shape of the car in the mirror. Same model, same color. His car. He blinked. The image shimmered like looking into a mirror. Inside that second car, through the fogged windshield, he could almost see himself, but the figure behind that other wheel wasn't quite him. The posture was too rigid. The head tilted at an unnatural angle. The eyes, when the headlights flickered, were open, but unmoving. Ryan shouted, "What the hell is this?" The other car swerved in perfect sync with his. Every movement, every turn, a reflection following him down the endless road. The radio voice whispered again, clearer now. "You took the wrong road, Ryan." The reflection car sped forward, closing the distance. Ryan slammed on the brakes. The reflection didn't. The impact never came. Instead, the lights vanished again, leaving only the mist. Ryan stepped out of the car, the wet air swallowing him. The rain had stopped completely. Not even wind now, only the faint echo of dripping water from somewhere unseen. He looked down the road. The asphalt was lined with parked cars stretching endlessly into the fog. Every one of them was identical. Sam modèle, Sam licence plate. Each one with the driver's door open and a seat inside that bore the faint, ghostly shape of someone who had been sitting there just moments before. Ryan stumbled backward, whispering to himself, "No, no, no." A faint voice came from behind him, the same one that had spoken from the passenger seat earlier. "You're just another one, Ryan." Another who never turned back. He turned, but there was no one there. Only his car engine running. Headlights dimmed. The driver's door was now open, and from the radio, faint static again whispering something like breathing, something like his own name repeated over and over. Ryan climbed back into the car, trembling, drenched in cold sweat. He pressed the ignition. Nothing. The car wouldn't start. Then, from the fog ahead, he saw two headlights turn on one of the identical cars now facing him from down the road. The engine of that car revved. Ryan gripped the steering wheel. His breath quickened. The sound grew louder, closer until it was deafening. He whispered, "Lily, I'm sorry." The headlights surged forward, blinding white, and then silence. When the light faded, the road was empty once again. Just another car, idling quietly on an endless, mist-covered highway, with no driver in sight. The road stretched out like a ribbon of dying light, swallowing itself into the horizon. Ryan's breath fogged the inside of the windshield. The air in the car was heavy, damp, carrying the faint metallic tang of rain and something else, something old. The headlights flickered once, twice, then steadied. The dashboard clock blinked 12:01 a.m. He blinked hard. That was impossible. It had been 12:01 since the first call. "Come on," he muttered, tapping the clock. "Move." But it didn't. The numbers burned softly. Fixed eternal midnight. Ryan pressed harder on the gas pedal. The car responded reluctantly, humming low as if pushing through water. The world outside looked almost painted motionless trees, static clouds, and that endless gray ribbon of road leading nowhere. Then he noticed something in the distance. A red glow. Faint at first, then sharper, pulsing like a heartbeat. He leaned forward. Brake lights. A car stood still in the middle of the road. Same model, same color, same everything. Ryan slowed down, tires crunching over the wet asphalt. The engine whined softly, echoing in the fog. As he approached, he saw his own license plate reflected in the mist. His throat tightened. No. He slammed the brakes, stopping a few meters away. The red glow of the car ahead illuminated the fog between them, and through that blur he could see a figure inside, sitting in the driver's seat, head tilted to the side, eyes closed. Himself. Ryan stumbled out of his car, shoes splashing in shallow puddles. The air was so cold it bit into his skin. He took one hesitant step toward the other car, the fog curling around him like smoke. "Who are you?" he shouted. His voice came back to him soft, muffled, like shouting inside a dream. No answer. He approached closer. The other Ryan didn't move. His face was pale, mouth slightly open, as if mid-breath. The eyes fluttered. Ryan's heart stopped. The reflection breathed. Then it smiled. The radio in his car behind him came to life, though he hadn't touched it. The static bled into a voice, distant and broken, yet unmistakably familiar. "It's okay, Ryan. You're almost there." "Yeah." He turned back toward the sound, but the fog thickened, swallowing everything: the road, the cars, even the light. And then the knocking, soft, rhythmic, from inside the trunk of his car. He froze. "Hello?" No reply. He stepped toward the trunk, hand trembling, every instinct screaming at him not to open it. But something deeper, something desperate pushed him forward. He lifted the lid. Inside there was a phone, his old landline phone, the same one from the apartment. It rang once, twice. The sound didn't echo, it vibrated, like it was coming from everywhere at once. Ryan picked it up. "Hello?" Static. Then a voice. "Lily's. You didn't answer the second time, Ryan. You should have." He fell to his knees. "Lily? No, I did answer. You kept driving." "I didn't mean to. You left me there." Her voice grew sharper, fragmented by bursts of static. "I was calling from the other side of the line. I tried to tell you. The road you took isn't real." The words wrapped around him like ice. His vision swayed. He whispered, "Where are you?" "Right here," she said. The fog shifted. He turned. Lily stood beside the other car, barefoot on the wet road. Her hospital gown clung to her skin, translucent, her eyes empty, yet bright with reflection. She raised a trembling hand and pointed toward him. "You have to hang up now." "What?" Before it finishes ringing, Ryan looked down at the phone. It was still ringing endlessly, each tone slower, deeper. "If you don't," she whispered, "you'll keep driving forever." His hand hovered over the receiver. Tears blurred his vision. "Lily, I don't want to lose you again." "You already did," she said softly. "Now let go." The final ring stretched longer, melting into a low hum, a dial tone that didn't stop. Ryan closed his eyes. Slowly, he set the phone back into the trunk. When he opened his eyes again, the fog was gone. The night was clear. The road behind him was empty. Ahead, city lights shimmered faintly in the distance. He laughed in disbelief. "I did it. I'm back." He climbed into the car and started the engine. The dashboard lights flickered to life. The clock still read 12:01, but this time, it didn't matter. He pressed the pedal, feeling the car glide forward. But as the city lights grew brighter, something strange happened. The buildings didn't look right. The windows were too still, too dark. The streetlights cast no shadow. Ryan's smile faded. He rolled down the window. No wind, no sound. And then he saw them. Cars. Dozens of them, parked neatly on both sides of the road. All the same make. All the same license plate. Every driver slumped over the wheel. Every face his own. The phone in his passenger seat began to ring again. He didn't look at it this time. He just drove. As he passed the first row of cars, He realized each one played the same faint sound from its radio, a dial tone, stretching into infinity. And beneath it, faintly, like a whisper, buried in static, "You never hung up, Ryan." Story 4. The Guardian of Time. There are places where time doesn't move the way you think it should. It doesn't tick. It waits. That's how it felt inside Finnegan's Watch and Repair. A narrow little shop pressed between two taller buildings, its windows fogged by years of breath and rain. The sign outside was missing a few letters. Now it just read, Inneggins, and the doorbell didn't chime anymore. It clicked. Softly, like the second hand of a clock refusing to let go. Finnegan himself was the kind of man people only noticed when he stopped moving. His shoulders were rounded from decades of leaning over ticking hearts. His fingers trembled slightly, not from age but from memory. He'd been fixing watches for almost 50 years, ever since his father told him that keeping time was the same as keeping souls steady. And maybe that's why, when he found the first clock that wouldn't restart, he didn't call it broken. He called it waiting. It was a carriage clock from 1903, brass and cracked, the kind that seemed to hum even when silent. It came from a widow who'd said, "It stopped the moment Henry died. I'd like it running again." Finnegan had smiled kindly, promised to take care of it. He cleaned the gears, polished the glass, wound it carefully, but no matter how he tried, the clock refused to move past 6:12 p.m., exactly the minute the widow said her husband's heart had stopped. Finnegan didn't think much of it then. Machines had moods, like people. But when the second one arrived, another old timepiece, stopped at 2:47. Same story, same stillness. A quiet unease crept under his skin. It was as if each clock carried its owner's final breath, trapped behind its glass face. For a man who'd lived his whole life by rhythm, it was unsettling. He began to notice things. The ticking in his shop wasn't steady anymore. Some clocks ticked a half-second late, others too fast, like the whole room was breathing unevenly. And at night, when the city outside fell silent, the sound grew sharper, closer. Sometimes, he thought he heard words between the ticks. Not voices, but echoes. The tiny pauses between sounds forming a pattern, like someone whispering through time itself. He didn't tell anyone, of course. Who would he tell? His wife Margaret had passed 5 winters ago. His son Daniel lived 3 cities away and only called on Sundays if he remembered. Finnegan had the clocks. They were company enough. One morning, a boy entered the shop, young, maybe 20, wearing a cheap suit and a nervous smile. He carried a pocket watch wrapped in a handkerchief. "It was my father's," he said. "Stopped the day he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to." Finnegan nodded gently. "You'd like it to run again?" The boy hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe I just wanted someone else to hear it stop." Hinzering. There was something in that sentence that settled deep in Finnegan's chest. He took the watch, unwrapped it, and saw something strange. The glass face wasn't cracked. The gears weren't rusted yet. The hands pointed to 8:2 exactly. When he touched it, the metal was warm, alive. He wound it once. The gears shifted slightly, then froze again. He leaned closer. The faintest hum trembled through the air, but it wasn't coming from the watch. It was behind him. All the clocks on the wall had gone silent. Every single one. He turned slowly. Their pendulums hung still, their second hands frozen mid-tick, like 1,000 tiny eyes holding their breath. The silence pressed in on him, thick as fog. He could hear his heartbeat steady, unwillingly loud, and then tick, just one, from somewhere deep in the back room. Finnegan followed the sound. The hallway was dim, lined with clocks that hadn't moved in years. At the very end stood a tall grandfather clock, one he'd never been able to repair, a family heirloom his father had left him. It was ticking again, slow, heavy, deliberate, and when Finnegan looked closer, he realized the clock's hands pointed to 8:2, the same as the boy's pocket watch. He stepped back, uneasy. "That's impossible." The boy, still at the counter, called softly. "What time is it, sir?" Finnegan turned toward him. "It's But he couldn't finish. The boy was gone. The shop door was still shut. No bell, no sound, no movement. Just the echo of ticking that wasn't really there. He stood alone, staring at the clock's face, and saw, faintly reflected in its glass, the outline of someone standing behind him. He turned sharply. No one, only his own reflection caught in a dozen frozen clocks. For the first time in years, Finnegan felt afraid of silence. He locked the shop early that night, walked home beneath the amber streetlights, listening to the faint click of his heels against the pavement. Every few steps, he thought he heard an extra one out of rhythm, like someone walking just half a beat behind. When he reached his front door, the world was unnaturally still. No wind, no insects, not even the faint hum of the city. He stood in the dark living room, surrounded by old clocks that lined the walls like sentinels. Their faces glimmered in the dim light, frozen at random hours. He went to bed, leaving his watch on the nightstand. At exactly 8:02, it began ticking again. The first night after he discovered the clock's strange behavior, Leonard stayed awake. He sat in his armchair, staring at the pendulum, swaying in perfect rhythm. 6. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The house was silent except for that deep, measured pulse that seemed to echo through the floorboards, through his chest. He tried convincing himself it was nothing, that maybe the clock was simply out of sync. But every time the minute hand struck 12, he swore he heard it whisper. Not words, just breath. A soft sigh that rose from within the wooden case. At 6:15, the sound returned faint, like someone whispering behind the gears. Leonard leaned closer, and then, from somewhere deep inside the clock, "You're late." He stumbled back, his heart hammered. But when he looked again, the pendulum swung peacefully. The whisper was gone. He tried to sleep after that, but he kept waking at odd times. 3:33, 4:44. Each time, he could hear the clock ticking steadily in the next room, though he could have sworn he'd stopped it before bed. By morning, he convinced himself it was stress. His doctor had warned him about overwork, about the way grief eats at your sense of time. Ever since his wife died, days blurred together. Maybe he'd just imagined it. Still, when the clock struck 6 again that evening, Leonard felt it a weight in the air. The living room dimmed, shadows pulling long and heavy. He approached the clock again. The brass dial gleamed faintly, reflecting his face, pale, tired, uncertain. He reached out and touched the glass. Cold, too cold. Then, the ticking stopped. For the first time since he'd owned it, silence filled the room. No tick, no talk, only stillness. He stared. The pendulum hung frozen in the air. Then, from behind him, a voice whispered, not from the clock this time, from the hallway. "It's almost time." It spun around. No one. He stepped toward the hall, calling softly. "Who's there?" His voice echoed strangely as though the walls swallowed it, stretched it, and fed it back to him an instant later. "Who's there? There. There." He turned on every light he passed, but they flickered oddly, dimming whenever the second hand reached 12. By the time he reached the kitchen, all the clocks on the walls, digital, analog, even his phone displayed the same time. 6. He stared in disbelief. "That's impossible," he muttered, checking his watch. 6. Then the power went out. The air turned heavy. The only light left came from the grandfather clock, faintly glowing from within, like a lantern burning underwater. Leonard felt something move, not physically, but in the air itself, like pressure. And beneath it, faint but clear, came the whisper again. "Every hour has a keeper." His breath caught. He stepped back, but his foot brushed against something, a shape on the floor. He looked down. A shadow, but not his. It was standing closer to the clock, outlined sharply against the glow, though there was no one casting it. The pendulum began to move again, slow, deliberate, and backward. The hands on the face followed. 6 became 5:59. Then 5:58. He couldn't breathe. A faint tapping sound came from inside the clock, like fingers against glass. Then knock, knock, knock. Leonard stepped closer again, drawn in by a kind of terrified fascination. He whispered, "Who are you?" No response. Then, in a barely audible murmur, he heard, "You traded her time for yours." The words sank into him like ice. He stumbled backward, shaking his head. No, I didn't." But he knew what it meant. The accident. The night his wife died. He'd been the one driving. The crash had stopped her clock and left his still ticking. The pendulum slowed. 6 again. He stood frozen in the darkness as the air shifted, colder now. And then the whisper grew into a chorus. Dozens of voices, faint but layered, all saying the same word. Tick. Then a pause. Tok. Leonard screamed. The lights burst on. The clock stopped again. He was alone in his living room. The pendulum hung still. The whisper was gone. He looked around, shaking, and saw something that hadn't been there before, an inscription etched faintly into the brass rim. 1 minute borrowed must be 1 minute returned. The next morning, Leonard tried to destroy the clock. He swung a hammer at it, but the glass didn't crack, it only rang, sharp and metallic, like a bell. When he dropped the hammer, the hand shifted again, now pointing at 5:59. He sat down, breathing hard, and waited. When the clock struck 6 again, he didn't flinch. He whispered to himself, "If you want time, take it." But no voice answered. Only the ticking resumed steady, calm, eternal. Outside, the evening light dimmed too quickly, like the sun itself had skipped ahead. And somewhere in the house, faintly, he thought he heard the sound of another clock ticking, one he didn't own. Somewhere deeper, somewhere older. Leonard looked up from his chair and realized that the pendulum wasn't swinging anymore, it was beating in time with his heart. By the next evening, Leonard had stopped trying to fight the clock. He sat before it as one might before an altar, the room dark except for the faint rhythmic gleam of brass and shadow. The air was thick, like the entire house was holding its breath. He told himself he was only observing, documenting even. He'd begun writing in his late wife's old journal pages, once filled with grocery lists and small joys, now filled with his notes. 6. The pendulum reverses. Whisper returns. 6:15 time slows. Can feel the space between ticks widen. 6:30 shadow on the wall not matching light. Possible optical effect. But when he reached the entry for 6:45, he hesitated, because that was when he started hearing it again. The silence. It wasn't absence of sound. It was present, something too deep to be heard, pressing in between the seconds. Tig, pause, tuck. In that pause, Leonard could feel something moving, not in the house, inside the silence itself. That night, he sat completely still and counted the space between each sound. 1, 2, 3, tick. 1, 2, 3, talk. But somewhere between 6:10 and 6:11, the rhythm faltered. Tick, pause, pause, pause. The next talk never came. Instead, the silence thickened until it rang in his skull like static. The air rippled, and then he saw it. In the glass reflection of the clock behind his own face stood a figure, motionless, watching. He spun around. Nothing. But in the reflection, the figure was still there, not closer, not moving, but clearer, as if the longer he looked, the more it began to form. At first, it looked like a shadow. Then, like someone half seen in fog. Then, unmistakably like hair. His wife. Her face was calm, but her eyes, wrong. They were too still, like they weren't looking at him, but through him. He reached toward the glass, trembling. Evelyn? Her reflection blinked. Slowly. And in the same instant, he heard her voice, soft, low, and distant. You shouldn't be awake for this. Then the lights in the house went out again. Leonard stood in perfect blackness, the glow of the clock the only light left. He stumbled backward, knocking into the armchair, whispering, "You're not real. You're not." But her voice came again, closer this time. "The hours don't belong to you anymore." He clutched his chest. His heartbeat felt off, too slow, too heavy. It began sinking with the pendulum's swing. Each beat came with a faint echo. Tick pulse, tock pulse. He could feel the boundary between himself and the clock breaking down his breath, his heartbeat, his time becoming one with it. He screamed and smashed the clock face with his bare hands. The glass shattered. Silence fell. And then, the pendulum kept moving, even without glass, even with the face broken open. Gears glinting like teeth, the mechanism still swung, and in the center of the broken clock face, behind the shattered numbers, he saw something gleaming. A small brass plaque. He brushed the dust away and read it. Property of the horologist. Time repaid in full. He staggered backward. The horologist? The silence around him deepened. It felt alive. He turned toward the door, ready to run but froze. Every clock in the house, dozens of them, old and new, battery or wind-up, began ticking again, but not in sync. Each one slightly off from the others. 100 different beats, colliding, overlapping, tick, 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 ticked, until they suddenly stopped. One sound replaced them. Footsteps, measured, slow, coming from upstairs. He stared at the stairwell. He hadn't gone up there since Evelyn died. Another step, and another. Then her voice again, echoing faintly from above. "You owe the hour," he whispered. "I don't understand." But as he said it, his watch vibrated faintly. He looked down. The second hand wasn't moving. The screen showed one word, where the date should be: repay. He tore it off and hurled it across the room. The footsteps stopped. Then suddenly the silence pressed in again, sharper this time, almost metallic. He realized, with horror, that it wasn't silence he was hearing, it was the missing second. The gap that used to exist between tick and tock. Something had been living there, waiting, and now it had stepped out. He could feel it standing beside him, not touching, just existing too close, a cold space in the shape of a person. He turned slowly, whispering, "What are you?" For the first time, the silence answered, not with a voice, but with a thought that wasn't his own. "You kept what wasn't yours. You lived past her time." He felt his chest tighten, his pulse faltering. The pendulum's swing slowed. Tick, tock, tick, and stopped. For a long, dreadful moment, nothing moved. Then all at once, every clock in the house struck 6. The sound was deafening. Leonard screamed and clutched his head. The room seemed to twist. Shadows stretched and folded, and when it stopped, he found himself sitting in the armchair again, staring at the grandfather clock, perfectly whole, not broken, not glowing. The time, 6. He checked his watch. 6. He looked out the window. Dusk. 6. He looked around the room. Every clock identical. Every hand frozen at the same position. Time had stopped. Leonard began laughing. Not out of madness, but out of a strange, relieved understanding. He whispered, "So this is it. This is what I owe." And from somewhere unseen, faint and final, came Evelyn's voice. "Now you can rest." He closed his eyes. The clocks did not move. The silence did not end. But if you listened closely enough, if you pressed your ear to the wood of that old grandfather clock, you could still hear it. A faint, slow ticking, coming from the inside. For the first time in his life, Leonard realized what forever felt like. It wasn't some endless stretch of days or years. It was 6 p.m., always 6. Outside the window, the sky stayed dim, neither dusk nor night. The shadows were permanent, printed on the walls like stains. He moved through the house, searching for anything that still lived. Sound, warmth, breath. But the world had settled into a still photograph. The coffee in his cup no longer steamed. The air no longer shifted. Even the dust motes had stopped midair, suspended in the amber light. He whispered to himself, just to hear a voice. This is impossible. But a deeper thought followed, quieter, more dangerous. No, it's punishment. He tried the front door. It opened, but outside was wrong. The street stretched out as usual, but there were no people, no birds, no cars, no hum of electricity. And far down the street, every house had its lights on, all of them showing the same time, 6 p.m. Leonard stepped outside, trembling. The air was dense, muffled as though he were underwater. He shouted. The sound barely left his lips. It dissolved before reaching the street. He walked, his footsteps heavy on the pavement, and with each step, he noticed something strange. There was a second pair of footprints forming beside his own, but no one was there. They appeared at the same pace, as if someone invisible were walking in perfect rhythm with him. He stopped. The other prints stopped. He turned slowly. Show yourself. The air shimmered faintly. Then he saw it. A flicker of reflection, like a human outline made of smoke. It tilted its head, and in the next instant, Leonard's own breath stopped as though the thing had taken it from him. He gasped, clutching his chest, and stumbled backward. Who are you? A whisper, thin as static, rippled through the frozen air. The hour you borrowed. Leonard's knees weakened. You mean the time I should have died? You traded her time for yours. He froze. Images flashed behind his eyes, the accident, the hospital, the doctor saying Evelyn had been gone for a minute before the defibrillator brought her back. 1 minute, 1 hour, it all connected. When she returned, she'd always said something haunted him. It's strange. I feel like I left something behind. He brushed it off, held her hand, and promised she was fine. But maybe she hadn't come back alone. Maybe that missing hour had been his. Leonard's vision blurred. The frozen world around him began to hum faintly, a deep, resonant vibration like the earth's pulse. The clocks in every house began to glow faintly, one by one. He turned in horror. Inside every window he could see shadows, people, each standing perfectly still, facing their own clocks. Their faces were blank, waiting. The shadow beside him whispered again, all who borrow must return. Leonard fell to his knees. Then take it. Take the hour. Just let me go. For a moment, there was silence. Then the voice said, it's already yours. And before he could react, the world began to move again. The clocks ticked, just once, and every light went out. When the darkness cleared, Leonard found himself standing in a narrow hallway. Not his house. Not anywhere he recognized. The walls were lined with hundreds of clocks, grandfather, cuckoo, digital, pocket, all ticking softly in sync. At the far end stood a figure in black, tall and thin, wearing no face, only a smooth, mirrored surface where features should be. In its hand, it held a long pendulum rod. Leonard whispered, Are you the horologist? The figure inclined its head slightly. You kept what was not yours. You watched the hours that belonged to the dead. Now you will guard them. Leonard took a step back. Please, I didn't mean every moment you took was borrowed breath. It lifted the pendulum rod and touched it to Leonard's chest. For an instant, time shattered. He saw flashes of everything he'd stolen, the heartbeat that should have stopped, the minutes that weren't his, the faces of those who'd run out of time while he lingered, and then silence. When Leonard opened his eyes again, he was back in his living room. The grandfather clock stood before him. It was ticking again. Everything looked normal. For a brief, fragile moment, he thought it was over, until he noticed the reflection in the glass. It wasn't him. It was the faceless figure, standing where he should have been, and the clock hands had changed, no longer marking time, but forming 2 letters burned into the brass. L.H. Leonard Harper, his name. He watched in horror as the pendulum swung once, twice, then stopped. The clock's door creaked open. Inside, among the gears and brass, hung a small silver plaque, guardian appointed, Leonard Harper, custodian of the dead hour. Outside, somewhere far away, a new clock began ticking. Another name waiting to be engraved. Another debt waiting to be paid. The morning came, or at least, Leonard thought it did. There was light through the curtains, but it wasn't sunlight. It had that dull, suspended glow, like the first second after lightning when everything hangs still before thunder catches up. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his hands. They looked older. The skin around his knuckles had gone gray, like dust gathering in the creases. Downstairs, the house was alive with ticking. Every clock that had ever stopped, every silent watch, every broken wall piece, even the digital clock that had lost power months ago was awake again. Tick, tick, tick. Thousands of heartbeats layered over one another, a swarm of seconds crawling beneath the surface of sound. He tried to speak, to shout, but his throat burned with dryness. The air felt thick, as if made of invisible dust, and beneath the ticking, there was something else. A whisper, like static, woven into rhythm. A voice he knew, a voice he loved. Leonard. He turned sharply. Evelyn was standing in the doorway, pale, trembling, but alive. Her eyes were ringed with sleeplessness, her hair tied back as if she'd been up all night searching for him. "Where have you been?" she asked. "You were gone for, I don't know how long." The clock stopped working, and I thought. She trailed off, glancing around. "What's that sound?" Leonard tried to smile. "It's nothing. Just the clocks." But she frowned. "No, it's not. It's familiar." She stepped closer, the ticking seeming to pulse with her every step. "It sounds like a heartbeat." Her voice broke on the word. She pressed a hand to her chest. Leonard's stomach turned. "Evelyn," she shook her head. "When I was gone, when my heart stopped, I heard that sound. That same rhythm. Someone was calling my name through it." He felt his pulse skip. "What did they say?" She looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "They said they weren't done with me." Leonard's breath came shallow. The clocks began to speed up, their ticks rising in tempo, overlapping until they became a rattling hum. He turned to the wall clock nearest him. Its hands spun wildly. 12, 6, 9, over and over. "Evelyn, listen to me," he said, grabbing her arms. "If anything happens, you need to leave. Don't look at the clocks. Don't listen." But she wasn't hearing him. She was staring past his shoulder, toward the grandfather clock. The glass door was fogging from the inside, and on the condensation, a handprint appeared. Fingers, then a palm, then another. Dozens. Evelyn screamed. Leonard threw himself between her and the clock, but the door burst open before he reached it. Cold air flooded out, smelling of old metal and dust. Inside, where gears should have been, was an endless tunnel lined with mirrors. Each mirror reflected a different time, their faces flickering, older, younger, lost. And at the end of that tunnel stood the guardian, the faceless being, still holding the pendulum rod, its mirrored mask now showing Leonard's reflection. It raised one finger to where its lips would have been. Silence. Then it pointed to Evelyn. Leonard shouted, "No! She doesn't owe you anything. Take me!" The guardian tilted its head. Its mirrored face rippled. And in the reflection, Leonard saw himself again, this time older, worn, sitting in the same room surrounded by clocks, whispering endlessly to no one. The guardian stepped aside, and in the reflection, the older Leonard looked up and smiled weakly. "It's your turn," he said. "Keep the time, until it stops keeping you." The world tilted. Leonard felt his heartbeat align with the ticking. Faster, louder, until he could no longer tell which one belonged to him. The air vibrated with invisible weight. Evelyn's voice reached him through the noise. "Leonard!" He turned, but her image was already fading, dissolving into grains of dust that shimmered in the air like seconds breaking apart. He ran toward her, but the floor beneath him shifted, becoming glass. Beneath it, clocks, hundreds, thousands, all counting down, each one with a name engraved across its face. He looked down and saw his own. Leonard Harper. 6 p.m. When Evelyn woke later that morning, the house was silent. The clocks were gone. Only one remained, the grandfather clock by the wall. Its pendulum swayed gently, and through the glass, she saw something that made her knees buckle. Leonard, not in body, but in reflection. His face etched faintly into the mirrored surface. Lips, moving as if whispering something she couldn't hear. And beneath his reflection, carved into the brass plaque, were new words. Guardian released. Successor appointed. Evelyn Harper. The pendulum stopped. The air grew still. Then, softly, every clock in the world everywhere skipped 1 second. A silence that no one noticed, except her. And somewhere in that silence, Leonard's voice whispered faintly, carried through the ticking, "Keep the hour safe, Evie, until it finds you." Story 5. The Lucky Charm. The morning mist hung low over the old railway bridge, swallowing the town in a pale, trembling fog. From a distance came the long, haunting cry of a train, a warning that no one cared to hear. A boy named Ethan crouched by the tracks, carefully placing something small and shining on the cold steel. A silver coin, his lucky charm, found outside the grocery store the day before. He had heard that if a coin is crushed by a passing train, it becomes a token of luck. Ethan smiled, whispering to himself, "Mom said I could use some luck for the exam." And he stepped back, heart pounding as the train roared closer. The iron wheels screamed against the tracks, sparks flashing as they passed. When the last car rumbled away, Ethan bent down to look, but the coin was gone. Only a dark, melted groove remained on the steel, like something had burned itself into the metal. Then he looked up and froze. Across the track stood a man in a long gray coat, face half hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The man was smiling faintly, a colorless smile that felt more like fog than flesh. Ethan blinked. The man was gone. Trying to shake it off, he slung his backpack over his shoulder and turned home. But as he reached into his pocket, the coin was there, flat, misshapen, and cold as ice. On its back, where the eagle should have been, was now a faint, circular mark, a mark that looked disturbingly like an eye, staring right at him. Ethan tucked it away. He didn't know that, at that same moment, on the other side of town, a man was found dead, struck by a train, his hand still clutching an empty wallet. Inside the wallet was a small photograph of Ethan and his mother. Ethan grew up believing he was lucky. At first it was small things. When the other kids tripped during soccer practice, he always stayed on his feet. When a car skidded through a red light one winter morning, it stopped inches from his knees. And when lightning struck the oak tree outside his house, it split in half but missed his bedroom by a single branch. Each time someone would laugh and say, "That kid's blessed," and Ethan would smile politely, fingers brushing the warped silver coin in his pocket, the one he had never let go of since that foggy morning at the tracks. By the time he turned 17, people had begun to whisper. They said Ethan's luck wasn't normal. They said the accidents that missed him always hit someone else. The story spread like dust through the town. A classmate who switched seats with him before a field trip killed when the bus overturned. A neighbor who borrowed his bike struck by lightning on a clear day. A teacher who stood where Ethan should have been during a lab experiment burned when a beaker exploded without warning. No one ever said it out loud, but they looked at him differently, like his smile was a curse waiting to unfold. Ethan's mother, Clara, tried to comfort him. "People just need someone to blame," she said one night, drying dishes under the soft hum of the kitchen light. "Accidents happen. You can't keep blaming yourself for surviving." He wanted to believe her, but sometimes, when he caught his reflection in the window, the coin would gleam faintly in his pocket like it had heard every word. He began to dream of it, of the man in the gray coat standing at the other side of the tracks. Sometimes he would speak, sometimes he wouldn't, but always the same phrase would echo through the dream: "Luck is never free." It was during senior year that things turned from strange to terrifying. The class was taking a trip to Lake Hollow, a calm reservoir surrounded by pine trees and mist. Ethan almost didn't go. Something about the trip felt wrong, like a pressure behind his eyes every time he thought of it. But his friends insisted. "You can't skip the last trip before graduation," said Ryan, his best friend. You're the lucky charm of the group. What could go wrong? Ethan laughed, but the sound came out hollow. The bus left before sunrise. The road wound through thick woods, climbing higher into the mountains. Ryan sat beside him, tapping his foot to the beat of a song leaking through his headphones. Ethan stared out the window, the world flashing by in gray and green smears. Halfway there, the driver, an old man named Mr. Coleman, muttered something under his breath. The fog's getting bad. Don't like this road when it's quiet. But the students didn't care. They were laughing, taking pictures, planning a weekend that felt like the start of real life, until the deer appeared. It darted from the mist, its eyes reflecting the headlights like two coins of fire. Mr. Coleman swerved hard. The bus lurched, wheels screaming as it tore through the guardrail. And then there was only falling. Metal twisted, glass exploded. The world turned white, and then black. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was lying upside down in the wreckage. His seatbelt had torn loose. Ryan hung beside him, motionless, his hands still clutching Ethan's shoulder as if he had tried to pull him back. Outside, the lake glimmered faintly, a mirror of silver ripples under the broken bus. Ethan crawled free, trembling. He could barely breathe. Around him, voices cried out, then faded. Sirens were still miles away. When they finally arrived, the rescuers said it was a miracle, a total miracle. 22 students, 19 dead, 2 missing. Only one survivor, Ethan Vale. After the funeral, Ethan stopped going to school. People didn't look him in the eye anymore. Some called him cursed. Others called him the boy who couldn't die. He avoided the train tracks for years, but one evening he found himself standing there again, drawn by something he couldn't explain. The mist was the same. The air smelled of iron and rain, and when he reached into his pocket, the coin pulsed faintly against his skin. Warm now, as if alive. That night, he saw the gray-coated man again. This time, closer. "You should have died," the man said softly. His voice was like wind through empty glass. Ethan tried to step back, but his feet felt anchored. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Why me?" The man tilted his head. "Because you asked for luck." He smiled, that same hollow smile from years ago. "But luck, my boy, is balance. Every favor demands its price." And before Ethan could speak, the man lifted his hand. Something glinted between his fingers, a coin. The same coin. "Each time it saves you," the man said, "it chooses someone else." The world went silent. Only the faint ticking of Ethan's watch remained. But then, even that stopped. Ethan awoke the next morning in his bed, drenched in sweat. It was just a dream or so, he told himself. But when he turned over, the coin was there on his pillow, perfectly flat and gleaming, and beside it a newspaper clipping. No headline, no photograph, just a single sentence. 2 missing students found dead in Lake Hollow, presumed drowned hours after crash. Ethan stared at the words until they blurred. He picked up the coin and pressed it to his forehead. It felt colder than ever, colder than the water in his lungs when he'd crawled from the lake that day. The following week, his mother tried to take him on a trip out of town. "Just a change of scenery," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. They drove through the countryside, past endless fields of wheat, the sun flickering through the car windows. At one point, a bird hit the windshield. A sudden, brutal impact that made her gasp. Ethan barely flinched. He was staring at the coin in his palm. It had started to hum. Then his mother spoke, voice trembling. "Ethan, do you remember your father's accident?" He looked up. "What about it?" He was supposed to be on the night train the day he passed. Her hands tightened on the wheel. "But he missed it. You'd lost your toy, and he stayed home to help you look." Ethan's mouth went dry. The toy train, he'd lost it near the tracks. The same morning he found the coin. That night, Ethan sat alone by the window, watching the rain fall. His reflection flickered in the glass, a pale outline, half shadow, half memory. He thought about all the times he had survived, all the times someone else hadn't, and somewhere in the distance, a Train whistle howled through the dark. He clutched the coin tight in his hand and whispered to no one, "Then take me instead." The coin grew hot, burning hot, until he had to drop it. It hit the floor and spun in a perfect circle, faster and faster, ringing like metal on bone. Then it stopped, landing on its edge. Standing upright, Ethan stared, and from the other side of the glass, in his reflection, the man in the gray coat smiled back. That was the night Ethan Vale vanished. The next morning, his mother found his window open and the curtains swaying in the cold air. On the windowsill sat the silver coin, perfectly still, and beneath it, written in condensation, were 3 words: "Luck is over." When the police arrived, they said it was suicide. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints outside the house. Only the sound of distant trains that wouldn't stop echoing even after the tracks had been shut down years ago. And yet, sometimes when the fog rolls in, people say they see a young man walking along the rails, his hand brushing the steel, a coin flicking between his fingers. If you call out to him, he'll turn and smile. He'll even offer you the coin. If you're smart, you'll walk away, because the boy who always survived isn't lucky anymore. The coin was found 3 days later. Or at least, that's what the official report said. A maintenance worker named Harold Griggs was clearing debris from the old train crossing near Eastwood Station when something gleamed beneath the gravel, a perfect silver disc, still warm to the touch despite the morning frost. He pocketed it without thinking. Harold wasn't a superstitious man. He'd spent 30 years fixing other people's problems, broken signs, loose rails, snapped wires. To him, everything could be repaired, if you just used enough patience and the right tools. But that day, everything seemed to go right for him. The rain that had been threatening all week never came. His broken coffee thermos suddenly worked again, the lid fitting perfectly. And when his boss called to tell him he'd been approved for early retirement full pension, Harold laughed so hard he almost dropped the phone. "Maybe my luck's finally turning," he joked to his wife that night. He didn't realize how right he was, or how wrong. It began with the birds, hundreds of them, circling the backyard, swooping in chaotic loops before slamming into the windows. Each one left a smear of feathers and blood against the glass. Harold's wife, Martha, screamed, but he just stood there, hand in his pocket, feeling the coin pulse gently against his thigh. Later that night, he sat by the fireplace, flipping it between his fingers. He couldn't stop looking at it. The edges caught the light in a way that made it seem alive, like it was breathing, matching the rhythm of his heart. He told himself it was just a coin, just a piece of metal, but when he set it down on the table, it didn't stop spinning. It spun, and spun, and spun, even after he went to bed. By morning, the air in the house felt heavier, like every breath had to push through something unseen. The radio crackled without signal. The clocks ticked slower, and Martha complained of a sharp pain in her chest. The doctor said it was stress. But that night, Harold woke to the sound of whispering faint, echoing, as if someone were talking through the walls. He followed the voice down the hallway, past the flickering lamp, until he reached the kitchen. The coin sat in the middle of the table, exactly where he'd left it. But now, a thin trail of black ash circled around it. He leaned closer. The whispering grew louder. A child's voice. "You took it." Harold staggered back, heart pounding. The voice came again, this time clearer. "It doesn't belong to you." And then silence. When he looked again, the coin was gone. He found it the next morning in his jacket pocket. He didn't remember putting it there, but somehow it felt right, comforting. Martha's condition worsened. The doctors couldn't explain it. Her body temperature dropped, her pulse grew faint, and she began muttering in her sleep the same phrase over and over. It's his turn now. The funeral was small. Harold stood at the edge of the grave, the sky gray and endless above him. As the coffin was lowered, he caught a flash of movement in the distance, a figure standing beyond the trees, tall, still, wearing a gray coat. When he blinked, the figure was gone. That night, Harold locked the coin in his toolbox, shoved it under his bed, and tried to sleep. But the dreams came again, and this time, he saw faces, dozens of them. floating through the mist, pale, blue-lipped, their eyes wide open. At the center of them all was a boy he didn't recognize. Young, soaked, trembling. The boy lifted his head and whispered, "Why did you pick it up?" 2 days later, Harold was hit by a train. The papers said it was an accident, that he'd been walking along the tracks, drunk or distracted. But the strange thing, the part no one could explain, was that the section of rail where he died had been shut down years ago. There hadn't been a train there since 2009, and yet the witnesses swore they heard the horn. After Harold's death, his nephew, Danny Griggs, inherited the house. Danny was 26, a mechanic, always broke, and perpetually one bad decision away from disaster. He didn't believe in luck. He believed in hustle. When he found the coin in Harold's toolbox, he almost threw it out until he noticed the design. No country, no date, no engraving, just a single, perfect face of silver. That week, his business suddenly took off. A stranger paid him in cash triple his usual rate for a quick fix. His ex called, apologizing for leaving him. And the scratch ticket he bought on a whim? $10,000? Danny laughed, spinning the coin across the counter. "Guess I'm finally due some luck," he said. Within days, things started to unravel. A fire broke out in his shop but somehow stopped before reaching his side of the room. A car crash outside his apartment left 3 people dead, but he walked away without a bruise. Each time, he thought about throwing the coin away, but every time he tried, it would show up again, once in his pocket, once under his pillow, once clenched between his teeth when he woke from a nightmare. And the voices followed him, too soft at first, then clear. Children, whispering, counting. 1 for luck, 2 for loss, 3 for balance. The night before his final accident, Danny called his sister. He sounded drunk, but there was something else in his voice, too. Something hollow. "It's not luck," he said. "It's a trade." "Danny, what are you talking about? Every time it saves you, someone else goes in your place." "Danny, you're scaring me. And if I die tomorrow, don't look for it. Promise me." The line went dead. They found his body in his workshop the next morning. No sign of struggle. No injury. Just gone. The only clue was a circle of black ash on the floor, and in the center of it, the coin. Months passed. The story faded, like all strange stories do, until it reached a pawn shop in North Haven, a dusty corner store that bought everything from broken radios to old jewelry. The owner, Mrs. Patel, remembered it well. A middle-aged woman had brought it in with a box of scrap metal, said she didn't want it in the house anymore. She wouldn't say why. She just whispered, "It keeps coming back." Mrs. Patel laughed and offered her $5. That night, she locked up the shop, switched off the lights, and went upstairs to bed. But sometime after midnight, she heard the faint sound of metal spinning. She came downstairs to find the coin on the counter, upright, turning slowly, perfectly balanced on its edge. When she tried to stop it, it burned her fingers. And then the shop phone rang, an old rotary phone she hadn't used in years. She picked it up. Static. A whisper. "Don't touch it." She dropped the receiver. The next morning, a delivery driver found the shop empty. The door unlocked, the lights still on. On the counter sat the coin, and beside it, written in dust, the words, "It always finds the lucky ones." They say it still travels. No one keeps it for long. Some say it moves through auctions, flea markets, old boxes of forgotten trinkets. Others say it appears when you need it most, when life pushes you to the edge. If you find it, you'll feel it before you see it. A soft warmth in your pocket, a pouce beneath your skin. And soon after, something good will happen. An accident avoided, a miracle that doesn't make sense. But then, someone near you will start to fade, slowly, quietly, until they're gone. And by then, it's too late, because the coin doesn't bring luck. It restores balance. Sometimes on foggy nights near Eastwood Station, the locals say they hear footsteps on the old tracks. A faint whistle, a boy's voice, whispering through the static of broken radios. "Flip it, if you dare. The first time Evelyn Sharp heard about the coin, it was through a message board. A thread titled, "Strangest Object You Ever Found" had blown up overnight. Most of the comments were harmless people talking about thrift store dolls, cursed mirrors, abandoned diaries. But buried near the bottom was a post that caught her eye. Found a coin with no country, no date, no marks, brings luck, at a cost. The replies were chaotic. Some laughed, some begged for proof, and one account now deleted simply wrote, "Don't let it choose you." Evelyn wasn't easily spooked. She'd spent years running a small YouTube channel called Artifacts of the Unseen, documenting cursed items, haunted heirlooms, and forgotten local legends. It wasn't fame that drove her, it was the thrill of control, the feeling that she could face something dark and explain it away. So when someone in the thread claimed to have the coin and was willing to mail it to anyone brave enough, she sent her P.O. box address without hesitation. 2 weeks later, it arrived. The package was small, no return address, no note. Inside, wrapped in layers of tissue, lay the coin. It was lighter than she expected, perfectly smooth, cool to the touch, and when she held it under her desk lamp, the metal shimmered faintly, like the surface of water disturbed by a breath. She turned on her camera. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. "It's the middle of the night. There's no inscription, no stamp, nothing. Just this strange silver sheen." She flipped it onto the desk clink. The sound echoed longer than it should have. For a moment, she thought she heard something beneath the ring, like a faint whisper, too fast to catch. She leaned closer to the mic. "Maybe it's..." And then the power went out. When the lights came back, the camera was still recording. Evelyn watched the playback later. Right after she'd said, "Maybe it's..." The screen flickered for exactly one frame. The coin wasn't on the table. It was in her hand, except she hadn't touched it. At first, it was harmless. Her next few videos went viral. Subscribers poured in. Brands reached out. Every little inconvenience seemed to solve itself. Her rent was lowered. Her neighbor's dog stopped barking. Her migraines vanished overnight. And yet, every time something went right, something else went wrong. Just not to her. A viewer commented, "My house burned down after watching this video." Another wrote, "I heard your voice in my dream, and it told me to pick up a coin. I woke up holding one." She laughed it off. Internet weirdness. Until she received an email from a man in Ohio. "You have what belongs to my son. Please stop before it finds you too." There was an attachment, a photo of a boy, no older than 10. He stood by a railway bridge, smiling shyly at the camera. In his hand was a silver coin. The file name was Ethan, JPG. Evelyn deleted the message, but that night, she dreamed of the boy. He was sitting in a recording chair, turning the coin over in his fingers. When he looked up, his eyes were hollow. "You keep showing it," he said. "Now they all have it." She woke, gasping, her phone buzzing beside her. A flood of notifications. Her newest video had hit 1 million views overnight. In the comments section, hundreds of users were claiming to find the same coin. Some uploaded pictures, grainy, blurred, all slightly different, but each coin identical in shape, shine, and reflection. And in every photo, no matter who posted it, a faint shadow hovered near the edge of the frame, a tall figure in a gray coat. Evelyn tried to rationalize it. Mass hysteria, collective illusion. She even filmed a follow-up video debunking her own story, laughing nervously as she dropped the coin into a glass jar. "See? It's just a piece of metal," she said. "Cursed objects aren't real. They're projections. We give them power." She sealed the jar, set it on the shelf, and ended the recording. But when she played back the footage later, something chilled her. Her own voice was slightly distorted, slower, lower, as if layered with another tone beneath it. And after she said the words, "We give them power," the video froze. Her reflection in the monitor blinked, but she hadn't. That night, her phone rang at 3:11 a.m. An unknown number. She answered without thinking. "Hello?" Static. Then a faint voice. "It's mine." The line went dead. She threw the phone onto the couch and turned toward her desk. The jar was open. The coin sat beside it, and next to the coin, pressed into the wood, was a perfect black fingerprint burned into the surface. Over the next days, Evelyn's life began to dissolve in small, terrifying ways. The clocks in her house stopped at different times. The mirrors reflected empty rooms, and every night she could hear a faint metallic sound from somewhere under the floorboards, like a coin spinning endlessly. She tried to give it away. She mailed it to another collector. 2 days later, the envelope came back unopened with her own handwriting on the label. Then she tried to destroy it. She heated it, froze it, smashed it with a hammer. Each time, the coin came out untouched. On the final attempt, she set it on the stove and turned the burner to high. The metal began to glow, not red, but white, like bone, and in the center of it something rose in imprint, forming slowly, perfectly, an eye, watching her. She stopped uploading after that. Her followers assumed she burned out, or took a break. But in reality, Evelyn spent weeks researching every mention of the coin she could find: old police reports, missing person cases, archive blogs. She built a timeline. 1,953. The first reported sighting a child killed near a railway in Vermont. 1,971. A string of unexplained coincidences tied to a stolen coin in Chicago. 1994. A collector's death in London. 2011. An unsolved disappearance in Eastwood, Connecticut. And every few decades, the coin resurfaced, always in a new hand, always with the same pattern: luck, survival, and someone else's loss. Her last entry in her digital journal, timestamped the 17th of August 2022, read, "It's not an object. It's a pattern, a self-correcting event, like a virus that infects probability itself. It doesn't choose victims, it finds hosts. The moment you try to understand it, you already have it." 3 weeks later, her landlord entered her apartment after complaints of a smell. The place was silent, lights off, computer still running. The last video on her screen was paused mid-frame, Evelyn sitting at her desk, holding the coin up to the camera. Except, in the reflection behind her, someone else was standing. A boy, wet clothes, dark eyes. And just before the video ended, her lips moved. Not her voice. A whisper. "It's your turn now." Authorities never found her. The police report listed her as missing, presumed dead, but her YouTube channel stayed active. Videos continued to upload every few months, short clips, no voice, just static and faint metallic ringing. Each thumbnail showed the same thing: a silver coin, an eye in the center, and the title, "For the Next Collector." If you're listening to this now, if the name Evelyn Sharp sounds familiar, check your surroundings. Maybe you've seen it somewhere recently. A coin on the sidewalk, in your pocket change, gleaming faintly in the dark. Pick it up, and you'll feel that warmth, that strange pull, like gravity has shifted slightly toward you, and you'll tell yourself it's just a trick of the mind. But remember, it's never really lost. It's always between hands. And if you're hearing this story late at night, in the quiet between 1 second and the next, listen closely. That faint metallic ring you hear, that's not your imagination. It's choosing. The morning after the accident, the news spread fast. "Miraculous survival," the anchor said. A 12-car pileup, only one survivor, a boy found completely unharmed. His name was Benji Cross. Same face, same crooked grin, same lucky charm, a small brass coin tied around his neck. Miles watched the broadcast from the edge of his hospital bed, his arm in a sling, his thoughts drifting in and out of clarity. He wasn't sure how he got out of the wreck alive, only that a second before the crash, he had dropped the lucky coin his grandfather gave him and bent down to pick it up. A strange impulse, as if someone whispered now. The whisper had sounded familiar. That same day, Benji's photo was everywhere, smiling, holding up a small medal, the news calling him the boy who always survived. They said he'd been in 3 accidents before. He was always there, and always the last one standing. By the second night, Miles started noticing the flip. He called it that, the flip. The way things around him began to reverse. The coffee mug that was chipped on the right was suddenly chipped on the left. His wall clock ran backward for a second, then forward again. His own reflection, when he looked in the mirror, smiled a moment too late, and in that reflection, sometimes the brass coin glimmered on the other version of his chest. He didn't have it anymore, it was lost in the wreck. But the reflection did. That night, Miles dreamt of a long hallway lined with countless people, strangers, all clutching coins identical to his. At the end stood Benji, holding out a coin with a new scratch carved in the center. "Your turn," the boy whispered. "Every flip needs a balance." Miles woke, drenched in sweat. He turned on the light. The clock read 3 amperes. The phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thanks for catching it for me." No number. No reply possible. He threw his phone down, but it rang anyway, a single shrill tone, like a metal coin spinning on glass. When he answered, the voice on the line was soft, childlike, but layered like hundreds of whispers stacked on top of each other. "It's not luck, Miles. It's just wait. Someone has to hold it until it flips again." The call ended. When the sun rose, a breaking news alert flashed on his TV. Benji Cross found dead after falling from a bridge. Authorities call it a tragic accident. Miles just stared. His fingers moved unconsciously toward his chest. Something cold touched his skin. The brass coin, back where it had always been. The coin gleamed faintly, but when he turned it over, the engraving was different this time. Not his initials, but Benji's. And beneath it, a new mark, a small, perfect scratch, like a countdown tick. That day, everything around him seemed normal again. Traffic lights worked, clocks kept time, reflections moved correctly. But every once in a while, Miles would feel a flicker, a moment, where his world blinked, and another took its place. In those flashes, he could see someone else, somewhere, clutching a matching coin, breathing just a little too fast. He'd see the coin flip and land on the other side. And somewhere, miles away, another miracle survivor would be born, while someone else, someone ordinary, would die for no reason at all. Miles stopped watching the news after that. But sometimes, when he drove past an accident and saw the flashing lights, he could feel the coin hum faintly in his palm, the air bending around it like a heartbeat. It didn't bring luck. It just moved it. And when he tried to throw it away, it always came back. Sometimes he'd wake in the middle of the night, his phone glowing faintly beside him, displaying one unread message, always the same words. "Your turn again." Then, a faint metallic sound, like a coin hitting the floor, and spinning, until the world flipped once more. "You've made it all the way through." 5 stories, 5 mirrors, each showing a truth we like to ignore. That every promise can echo, every second can slip away, every word can curse the one who speaks it. And sometimes, the luckiest people are the ones who were never chosen at all. If the night feels colder now, if the silence hums a little louder, that's just the world settling back in after listening. Until next time, keep your doors locked, your clocks honest, and your phone off after midnight. This was 5 strange but true today, and I'm your host, reminding you, some echoes never fade. They just wait to be heard again.